This is Janelle Camion. Oops, it's here. This is Janelle Camion, Program Assistant. If any, we have a quorum and we'll be exiting practice mode, so anything you say going forward will be recorded.
Test. Test.
Test. This is Janelle Camion. Testing. Testing. Pardon, sorry. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33. Better?
It's these two, they weren't connected to audio.
So there's no more echo?
Well, we're just gonna get the Zoom session back on.
Okay. Okay, I'm going to take us off practice mode if there's no more echoing. Good? Okay.
Recording in progress.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the May 5th Utility Advisory Commission meeting. We'll start with roll call starting online. Commissioner Scharf,
Present.
and then we can just go down from the right.
Commissioner Phillips, present.
Commissioner Forcell, present. Commissioner Mater, present.
Commissioner Metz, present.
Commissioner Croft, present.
And Chair Siegel present as well. Thank you. We do not have any agenda changes, additions, or deletions, so we'll turn to public comments. Are there any comments from the public not on an item that is not on the agenda?
This is Janelle Camion, Program Assistant. If anyone from the public would like to make a public comment, please raise your hand or dial *9 on your phone. No hands raised.
Thank you. So we will move on to the minutes. We have 2 sets of minutes to approve tonight. So we will start with the minutes from the March 1, 2023 meeting. Are there any comments on those minutes? I don't see any comments, so I have a motion to accept the minutes as proposed.
Move to accept.
I second.
And then we'll go down the line, starting with Commissioner Scharf again on Zoom.
Yes.
Commissioner Phillips,
I wasn't at this meeting. Am I?
you're welcome to abstain as well.
I'll abstain.
I approve. Abstain.
We'll just go,
Approve.
Abstain.
and I approve, so we have a quorum, or we have a majority. And we can now turn to the second set of minutes from our April 12th meeting. Are there any comments to those minutes? Okay, so we can, if I have a motion to approve those as provided?
Give a motion to approve.
Great, so I'll go down the line. I'll change directions this time.
Yes. Accepted, approved.
Approve.
Approved. I approve.
Approve.
Commissioner Scharf?
I also approve.
And I approve as well. We can turn to the Utilities Director report. Director Batchelor?
Thank you. Good evening, Chair Siegel, Commissioners. A few items to talk a little bit about today is, as most of you remember, we had talked about some rebates for these high winter energy bills for the gas and for the electric. The utilities residential customers will have been seeing a rebate to their utility bills to the extreme high gas and electric costs that were experienced this winter. The rebates have been approved by council in the early April, and due to the financial reliefs, they're being calculated. And we've actually got those out to customers. They will see them on their April or on their May bill, depending on how their billing came out. And it was a gas rebate from $70 to $100. The electric was from $20 to $65 with an additional $100 electric service and $100 on their gas service available for residents in the rate assistance program, which is our RAP, or past due bills greater than 180 days. And those rebates will be automatically credited to, again, to the April and May, depending on when the meter reading fell. And there's also rate assistance programs that still for hardships that can still be applied for above and beyond those dollars that have been allocated. So so far that we sent those all out, we've heard good feedback from the community itself. These dollars were allocated out of the general fund They were not utility dollars. And the reason for that is that we decided that these rebates would be coming only to the residential's customers, nothing to the commercial. And so we can't use commercial rates to give monies to residential's or vice versa. So since this was only for a residential plan, the general fund had to make the decision to pay for these funds. So that's what we ended up doing. The city did. Tonight, you're going to hear a little bit more about our rate and our financial plans. We're planning on going to the finance group here on May 9th to talk about our capital and our expense budgets. We have taken our rate, which again, we'll hear more about that today. But we did take our rates to the finance group. They were passed with the exception of water and wastewater due to the Prop 218. We had to send those notices out, but the electric and gas passed. So we'll be taking those back along with input from tonight, as well as input on the 9th for expense, and that on June 19th. And if approval from council, these will become effective July 1. The bill changes on the average on residential with 6 services is about $11. And you'll see that later this evening. Staff's implementing a robust outreach, informing customers of these rate changes and the reasons for these cost increases. This includes conversations with the local media, direct communications with customers through our utility bill inserts, emails, newsletters, websites, social media, business groups, that we've been telling customers that this is pretty much where we think these financials will fall, and there will be an increase. And like I said, for the overall, and you'll see this today, the overall bill would be about $11 per month. A little bit on our electric hydro. Due to the recent rise in temperatures, the large amount of snowfall received by the state during the past winter is now starting to melt and flowing in the reservoirs, and they're generating our hydropower. This has led to significant increase in hydro generation, and the projections for the next couple of years, as much as high as that we could see, is 25% above the average for this time. In the Central Valley area, or Central California, we saw about 60% above average. Despite the fact that, considered the amount of snow has already melted, the overall snowpack levels is still more than twice the average amount for this time of the year than normal. When we take this information into account, we can project that the city hydro reserve or resources will produce approximately about 104% of our long-term average level output for fiscal year, and about 122% over the long-term average level for 24. So good news in that area, that we'll be able to produce much lower, cheaper rates for our electricity. Excuse me, a little bit on our drought. On April the 11th, Palo Alto Water Supplier San Francisco Public Utilities Commission rescinded their water shortage emergency declaration, but kept the voluntary San Francisco Regional Water statewide reduction of 11% in place till the state emergency regulations expire in June. Palo Alto water restrictions track both the state regulation as well as the SFPUC water. Staff anticipates Palo Alto will be able to lift the 2-day per week on watering restriction at that time. The state, however, is likely to leave some restrictions in place, including restrictions on watering within 48 hours after a rain event, and a ban on irrigation on non-functional turf with potable water at the commercial customer sites. A little bit on an update on our heat pump water heater program. Palo Alto's full service heat pump water heater program is generating a lot of community interest. More than 450 residents are awaiting assessments. To date, we've had 6 heaters been installed. Since the launch, it's this program, working with this vendor that we have, has been able to identify and implement some improvements so that there's not such a backlog. So there's a backlog in the customers that we have of these 450. And you can imagine if your water heater goes out today, what are you going to do? Now you're in the line of this 450, but that's not very efficient for the family. So what we've learned so far is to gain some efficiencies working with the contractor and moving forward to try to get some synergies around getting these 450 customers at least assessed and what some of these costs might look like. There's two no hassle alternatives. There's a $2,700 upfront or $1,500 upfront plus $20 a month for the next 5 years. That's added to the residential bill. Earth Day month was April, and it was a busy month for 2 EV workshops, 2 EV Explorers, and a sold out e-bike test ride event at Mitchell Park. Staff also participated in 2 Earth Day community events. The first was an event at Stanford Hospital celebration. Staff used fun spin and wheel games and were given fun facts about various electric appliances and clean energy sources. The second event was held at Rinconada Library, including a gardening tour. Staff spoke to residents about water conservation and city's newly launched full-service heat pump water heater program. Some of the upcoming events that might be of interest to you. May 3rd from 7 to 8:30 is tree selection and watering and care. This weekend is the 99th Mayfet Parade. It's set for 10 o'clock. If any of you are interested in walking, you can meet at Emerson and University at 9:30. And staff will help you get situated. So if you would like to walk it, you're more than welcome to walk it. May 13th from 10 to 12 is Goodbye Gas, Hello EVs and EV Expos. And then May 15th, EVs 102. And then May 31st, between 5 and 6 EVs for backup power. So those will be the upcoming events in May. And that concludes my report. Questions I might be able to answer? Nope. Thank you.
Actually, one question. How was the rebates calculated for the gas? It's just a percentage of the gas bill for the month of December, or?
So what we did was we actually took the January bill, since that was the higher. And what we did was we took the average of the bills, was about $365 on the average cost. And then we came up with these dollar amounts that we talked about within that range for the gas as well as for the electric.
Thank you.
I have a question. Go ahead. I had a question on the tree selection. So I'm curious also about the street trees, but are you trying to help people?
Yeah, that's exactly what we're doing. We're trying to help customers that and residents that are thinking about maybe doing some new landscaping. Everybody's trying to get rid of the grass, and what are they going to re-landscape with? So we're helping them with plants, trees that are going to be tolerant to the drought, placements where it would be best, on the property lines themselves, and trees that are not going to. One of the things we do talk about is trees that are not going to grow large enough to get up in the power lines, if there's power lines around. So setting them back if it's possible, but if not, smaller trees.
Any other questions? Thank you. We'll now turn to the first item of business, which is approving a UAC chair and vice chair for this next term, which is slightly shorter, starting tonight until March 31 of 2024. So we'll start with the chair. Are there any nominations for a chair? Commissioner Forcell.
I would like to nominate Chair Siegel to continue a second term. I think she's been doing a great job.
I'll second that.
Thank you. Any other nominations for chair? Great, then we will vote. I guess it's a yes or no. Starting with Commissioner Phillips.
Yes.
I vote yes.
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 Commissioner Scharf?
I also vote yes.
Thank you. And I vote yes as well. So great. Then I'll continue to lead the meeting. And do we have a nomination for vice chair? Go ahead. Commissioner Forcell.
I would like to nominate Commissioner Scharf as vice chair. He's a very experienced and senior commissioner.
And I'll second that nomination. Any other nominations? Right, so we will start with a vote for vice chair for Commissioner Scharf, starting with Commissioner Phillips.
I vote yes.
I vote yes.
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 Yes. Commissioner Scharf?
Yes.
And
And thank you very much for the nomination and the votes.
I vote yes as well. So welcome. So we now have our vice chair and chair for this term. And we can move on to item number 2, which is the putting together a budget subcommittee. And we typically have 2 and can go up to 3 members. Are there any nominations for the budget subcommittee?
I'd be happy to do it.
I just want to add, it's a great way for new commissioners to get really familiar with the utility and the budget process. So don't be shy if you're interested to nominate yourself.
I nominate myself.
I'm interested as well. But I don't know if you want multiple new people or an experienced person and a new person, but I'd be interested in it as well.
Excellent. Any other?
I'd be happy to do it.
Great. Okay, so I think we have our 3-person budget subcommittee. Vice Chair Scharf and Commissioners Phillips and Croft. Thank you for volunteering for that. It really is a good experience. Okay, rolling right through to item 3, which is a discussion and presentation of the strategic plan implementation. Do we have any public comments?
This is Janelle Camion, Program Assistant. If anyone from the public would like to speak on item 3, please raise your hand or dial *9 on your phone now. No hands raised.
Thank you. So we have I don't know who's presenting.
I'll open it up, and then we actually have 4 folks that will be talking about their area. So CPAU's current 5-year strategic plan was originally developed and approved by council and this board in 2018. The current plan includes 4 key areas: workforce, collaboration, technology, and financial resource optimization and financial. And across those 4 key areas, there's 3 to 4 key performance indicators that track and report the plan progress, recognizing there are several intense and external factors that have changed since the last update in 2018. And tonight, we are going to share with you our updated strategic plan that will propose, starts the focus on defining the strategic destination and setting a stake in the ground, defining where CPU will be in the next 5 years. The strategic plan also focuses on efforts and reporting and tracking progress to more responsible and each strategic KPI that we have identified. So I think what we want to do is we want to kind of go through each of those main bullets in the key areas, and then we'll break it down a little further and give you the KPIs for each of those areas. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Dave Yen, our strategic business manager.
Evening, commissioners and council member. You guys were a little bit faster than we intended, so we're going to jump around the slides a little bit. So we'll start with the technology priority. All 4 priorities are equally as important. We just label them 1 through 4 for some reason, just to track them. So for technology, the increasing convergence of technology, utility services, and customer expectations is driving changes in the utility markets. As utilities, we must embrace technology to further enhance operational efficiency and also delivery of services. Customers' adoption of technologies such as direct distributed energy resources, EV, PV, and energy storage is also changing utility interaction with customers and demand for services. It's no longer a one-way communication now where we just simply provide power and energy and water. Now it's more like an AMI, it's a two-way dialogue between the residents, businesses, and utilities with their requests. So our mission statement for technology is to invest in and utilize technology to enhance the customer experience and maximize operational efficiency. The strategies under technology includes a 5-year technology roadmap to effectively guide our technology investments and customer programs, a citywide AMI deployment, enhancing customer interaction via our MyCPAU customer portal and our future OMS, our outage management system. We're also improving field operations with mobile applications and paperless forms, and providing continuous trainings to our employees for both existing and new technologies. Next slide. So some of the accomplishments that we've done in the past couple of years for under technology is the MyCPAU. We've had a pretty large success on this customer portal. I think we have about 78% adoption rate, which is really high for any of these customer portals. That's about 24,000 plus customers. I think 55% of our utility bill payments come through the portal. And so we are investing more and more into this portal, given the popularity of it. I think this past year, we added on-bill financing for those who's participating in that program. We also did a single sign-on for WaterSmart. So if you want to look at your water usage and conservation tips, it's on there as well. And going forward, though, we will be putting in AMI interval data and so forth. I think we also heard from the commissioners last year, we're going to be expanding the password and the different types of symbols. So there'll be more security on those. And also we'll be putting a link to the bill insert so it's more accessible as well. So we did hear when these are in the works. Other upgrades or accomplishments in 2019 through 2022 is we have completed the first phase of the AMI project, which is installing the base stations, which are the data collectors at 5 strategic sites throughout the city. They're mostly in substations and pumping stations. So they're all utility facilities. So it's kind of camouflage from the public. So those are working well so far. And some of the initiatives we have for this upcoming year is to start the planning and deployment of fiber to the premises. We also launched, as Dean mentioned, the heat pump water heaters with great success so far. I think, yeah, so on-bill financing we've done. And then also for the AMI meter so far, I think we've deployed about 1,200. We're hoping to deploy another 1,000 more meters by the end of the summer. And then we're hoping to do a full deployment for the residential side by September. And it should be hopefully on the residential side, we should be done by end of 2024. Or is it 24? Yeah, end of 2024. For the commercial side, it's more like mid of 2025. There is a slight delay right now on the commercial meters. And then for the new outage management system, we are hoping to deploy it by end of the summer or beginning of winter. So this will have new features. It will have a status updates for customers. So we'll notify them when there's an outage. So let them know that we're working on it. And we'll also provide them status updates every 30 or 60 minutes. Just let them know. So you should get faster responses from both our side and hopefully faster restoration as well. I think that's it for that. Is there any questions you guys have on any of these accomplishments or initiatives? I could pause.
Commissioner Croft.
Yeah, I have a general question about AMI and when it'll be rolled out and people will get, will have the opportunity to demand pricing. And are you doing any work to try to figure out what software will recommend to residents to kind of electrify their own homes so that it interfaces well with what the city has? So for example, if you don't want people to all charge their cars at the same time, you want to somehow do some kind of demand, optimization, you're going to need people's systems to be able to handle the data that you're giving them. So are you doing any work to try to recommend to people what to use on their side?
Yeah, we are trying to design some time of use rates just to incentivize people with EV chargers and other appliances to charge off during the off peaks, which is usually after 9 p.m. So we are working on those. There might be a couple different rates or so, but it's still in the works. So, but that is the main driver on those.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the question is, if I'm a homeowner and I want to put in a system that's going to help me, smartly control all my appliances, will you be recommending certain vendors, for example, to them?
I don't know if we're gonna recommend vendors per se, but we do have this little radio we can attach to those smart meters called Zigbee radio. So with that, you could buy a home device that will give you real-time instantaneous reads. So right now with the AMI meter, we are gonna give like the next day interval data. But if you want instantaneous, we can buy one of these home devices and monitor it yourself. I don't know if we thought so far out about recommending programs yet, but something we can discuss internally.
Commissioner Phillips?
On the installation of AMI meters, to install an AMI, does it require physical access to someone's property? And has anybody resisted having an AMI installed?
Sure. So we will be notifying customers at least 2 or 3 times. So we'll be sending an email or a letter a week in advance. We'll also give them a door hanger a couple of days in advance. And then we'll also knock on the door on the day of. So yeah, we will need access to the property. Most of the meters are outside the gate generally. So the ones that are behind the gate and are locked, we will schedule an appointment with them. In regards to people who want to opt out, they can. I think we have a list right now. It's very small. There might be a couple of customers so far that have chosen that opt out.
And kind of looking beyond the installation of AMI and going to time of use pricing, is the idea to have 100% residential installation of AMI before going to time of use pricing? Or are you planning to experiment with time of use pricing prior to having 100% residential AMI connection?
Ideally, we'd like to pilot it, but we're still trying to figure out how to design it. So if there's an opportunity to pilot it for the early adopters or for early installers, then yeah, we would like to do that.
Thank you.
Commissioner Mater?
Excuse me. I have 2 questions. The first is about the technology roadmap and the process that you are undertaking to design that roadmap. I assume that is not the roadmap that is shown in this final slide.
Maybe a little bit. This one a little bit is
This is the
kind
final
of a very
roadmap?
high level.
Okay. Okay, great. And I had not to pile on to AMI, but I would support the 2 prior commissioner comments in sort of suggesting that a clear pathway or a roadmap for not only AMI sort of communication with the customer and thinking about how the customer is likely to interface with AMI, but also internally, how your department can use AMI data to influence things like how you would establish time of use pricing signals across the utilities writ large, how workflows might be established for both collecting and disseminating data from that AMI, and also using AMI data in strategic planning and operational decisions. So, where does it make sense to do upgrades? Where does it make sense to do these other things? And I think this is a new technology that you're bringing on board, a roadmap specific to AMI, so that you derive the greatest value would be, I think, very beneficial activity to undertake in this year.
Okay, thank you. So for the deployment right now, we are doing a couple of different ways. So there are a couple of routes we've identified just to do parallel bill testing, just to make sure what our manual meter reads and what our AMI reads are the same. And then we're also targeting electrification homes. So so we get better data on our transformer loads on different times of the day. So we are spreading those out throughout the city. So if any of you guys want to be part of this AMI in the earlier phase, let us know, because we are spreading out those meters in every which way. So I mean, okay, you guys all do? Okay.
I mean, it would be, I would say unless somebody isn't interested, it'd be great if the entire commission were
Okay.
part of that.
We'll put you in the next rollout. There's 1,000 of them coming, so we can definitely accommodate that.
Commissioner Forcell?
Yeah, I was wondering if you could talk a little bit more about the coming outage management system and what bells and whistles and features it will provide that we don't
Maybe
currently
Anna
have.
might be better if she's here. She's our project manager for the outage management. This is Anna Vongs, Senior Business Analyst.
Hi, good evening. For the outage management system, we will have notifications for the customers. So if you call and you want to have a call back, there is a feature for that. There's going to be texting as well as if you prefer emails, you can have email notifications as well. We are working out the social media posting right now. So there is a possibility of social posting to, I think it was Twitter. And that those are the main features in terms of communications.
So when you say customers can call and get a call back, you mean they can call once to enroll in the notifications program? Or they can call when their power is out?
So it's when their power is out. So if you call in and you say, I would like to call back, I would like it to get a call back on the status of the outages, then you can request for that.
These are for the customers who aren't already in the system, right? So I think the system
Correct.
stores up to 5 numbers for each individual household. So if you're not on that 5 number list, then you would have to call. But if you're on there, then they'll automatically notify you automatically. So we are making that push right now to gather more information from customers to see who wants to be on that outage notification. That'll be automated.
And can you help me understand having the city's Twitter feed? Is that part of the new outage management system? Is that something we're not currently doing?
We're doing that manually right now. So Catherine or Jordan will have to wake up in the middle of the night and post a message.
So that's why sometimes when you get the Nixle notice that says go to Twitter and you go there and there's nothing,
Right.
that will be addressed.
Yes,
Got it.
it's very manual. Sure.
Any other questions? Commissioner
If
Met?
I could just add one more thing to that. Also too, is that as we go through, there'll be a feature when we do plan outages. So maybe there has to be a transformer upgraded in your neighborhood. Right now, what we do is we drop flyers off at each of your homes to let you know that this could be coming. Tells you kind of how long it'll take, what the work that needs to be done. Actually, this machine will actually be able to send those calls out ahead of time. So we won't have to be dropping just a piece of paper on your porch. It'll actually be on your phone. And as Dave and Anna mentioned, these 5 phone numbers, if you decide that, you want your, most of those messages to be sent to your phone, that's, you can choose where you want to have your messages sent to, up to 5. So if your entire family wants a message, then you could put those 5 numbers, and you have to call customer service to set that part of it up if it's already not in the system today. Because right now you
Or I
probably,
assume that my CPU,
or you
the
go on
portal, you could, yeah, okay.
Either way.
Just a clarification, the portal will take 2 phone numbers. So if you wanted to add more than 2 phone numbers, you do have to call customer service.
Okay, hi. Where are the electric grid related technology initiatives? I don't see anything on packet page 56 of the technology initiatives or in the roadmap that addresses that. It seems like that would be one of the most important topics.
Yeah, I think we'll be talking more about in the budget section under the CIP. So
Okay,
we do have a plan. We are applying for grants too as well.
well, it seems like that's the main thing we do and the main thing we spend money on, so we ought to do something about it.
Yep.
Okay.
One more question. Sorry, on the KPIs,
Mhm.
I think that was probably your section?
Yes.
Is that your section?
Yeah.
There is the KPI on the paperless tools that was, the goal was to get to 90% by 2019. And it's currently much below that. So I was curious, is that the GIS system is going to help that, or
Sorry, this is the paperless one?
yeah, page
Yeah.
19.
Right now in my CPAL, oops, is this on? Yeah, right now we have the option for customers to elect both paperless and online. I think we are trying to work with SCW to try to promote or default future people to only paperless and even convert the ones who are currently selecting both to paperless. So there is an initiative to hopefully move more people to paperless only. Right
Sorry,
now,
I was asking,
sorry,
sorry about that. I was asking about the second table
the second thing, oh,
where it's
paperless.
the tools for the field support staff.
Sure. For engineering, I think it's been a longer road just because of all the maps they need. And those are larger documents. You can't, it's hard to put on a tablet or a phone. I think with the new Esri platform, we will have more mobility. So we will be able to pull up these maps and bigger, zoom in better. So that is still in the works. So we're hoping to have it done maybe in a couple of years. Operations has done a better job in transferring most of the paper into paperless with their mobile apps.
I had a couple questions as well. Actually, on the going paperless for accounts, since we rely a lot on the mailer for communications to customers, do we have a communications plan or something where there is going to be some main place where customers can go to get the information that many customers receive today in their mailers?
Yes, so there is a bill insert website. It's just not obvious where it is. So we will try to promote that better. Well, like I said earlier, we were going to put it onto the MyCPAL website as well. So people just click on there and get those mailers directly.
Okay, is there any chance to have sort of an email list where people who were used to getting the inserts can receive them?
Yeah, that's a good idea. We could send it on the bill notification. I think there's an email that's sent that helps.
And then my other question was going back to the outage information. Right now, the outage map seems to be pretty, it's a nice tool. And I'm wondering with the upgrades, will that be more precise? Will it still be there? Are we getting rid of it?
Yes, it'll still be there and we're hoping it's more precise for sure. So that is the goal, but there is a lot of data cleanup and a lot of surveying we have to do out there right now in the field. So that's why it's taking a little longer than we had originally planned. It should have better projections of where the outages will be once the feeder comes off. So we just have to map everything out accurately.
Oh, so it's not the new, it's the information within the field itself that's the gating factor, so to speak.
Right.
Okay. Got it. Thanks. Thank you.
Okay. They want to go forward.
Let's go next. Oh, let's go next. Oh, Catherine wants to go. Yes.
Good evening, commissioners. My name is Catherine Elvert, the Utilities Communications Manager. I have the pleasure of knowing several of you for a few years now, and I want to welcome the new commissioners. We appreciate your service. I wanted to just quickly address one of the items that you were speaking about with Dave about having access to the bill inserts where customers often receive a lot of information. That information is available electronically. Customers who receive email notifications should get a link in that actual email linking to the bill insert webpage that Dave mentioned. But it's something that we have been trying for years to make more evident and prominent. And sometimes we have some limitations with our billing system and what we can include with some of those e-bill notifications. But as we continue our enhancements to our online account management tools and enhancements to our billing systems, those are some items that we want to make sure that we are working on as well to be more transparent with folks who want to be greener and have paperless services and not receive paper. But anyway, we'll continue to try to get the word out via as many outreach channels as we can, just to reach people wherever they are. Well, I am here to talk about the collaboration priority area of the utility strategic plan. And for a couple of you who were here, a few of you who were here during our last update back in October, you may have heard some of this, but for some of the new commissioners, I just wanted to address sort of an introduction to what we mean by collaboration just to start. So collaboration may be one of those buzzwords that people say, many of us say, but we don't always often think about what it actually means. So when it comes to our utility strategic plan, we believe that this area might be a little bit different, maybe a little bit of an outlier to some of the other sections, such as technology or financing, in that it's not always easy to define how to measure or track or quantify what success means for collaboration. It's something that we know that we inherently need to do, but we're always working to try to define what those key performance indicators and those metrics may be. So collaboration means to work with somebody to produce or create something. So just so that we can start off with this mindset when we're talking about this area of the strategic plan, I think we all know that we cannot operate in a silo, either as a utilities department or even as individuals. And that's why we're here to talk about what we are doing with our various stakeholders to enhance our mission of the City of Palo Alto Utilities Department. We're working within our various spheres of influences, such as community members, across city departments, within our utilities department, and then with outside agencies such as government, trade, and regional agencies, et cetera. So these are the 4 main strategies that we've identified. We developed our mission back in 2018, and that is to work with these different stakeholders to talk about, to recognize, and achieve those shared objectives. That involves a lot of coordination, communication, education, and delivery of services. So next slide, please. When we are talking about our accomplishments, well, many of these will not be a surprise to you. These are areas where we have identified successes in which we are working within these spheres of influences with these different stakeholders. So many of these items, there are initiatives or policies or their programs that we've brought to you, the Utilities Advisory Commission, over the years, which you have endorsed, you've provided guidance on, and then we have been able to take many of those to City Council to receive approval to continue the work in these areas and continue to deliver these services to the community. So many of these major focuses have been on sustainability, the Sustainability and Climate Action Plan, technological enhancements such as the fiber optics program, the advanced metering infrastructure, outage management system, customer service enhancements. And then many of the people in this room have been working very hard in order to put together some key initiatives, work plans, customer service, communication, and outreach strategies. And we've made some great strides at advancing these programs, and then again, taking these to City Council and being able to deliver these services to the community. So when we're talking about our community focus as one of the areas of the collaboration priority, we'd like to highlight something we're very proud of, and that's advancement of our heat pump water heater program. This is something we've been trying to get off the ground for quite some time. It's a key priority in the Sustainability and Climate Action Plan in order for us to meet our greenhouse gas emissions. And we've been able to receive contract approval and begin work with a marketing consultant this last fall so that we can roll out a robust outreach campaign to meet our goals. And so you'll start to see some of those marketing materials hitting the ground, hopefully soon, once we work through some of the contract logistics. But we're really excited about that. We have ambitious goals there. We were able to host a community workshop on home electrification alternatives in this last quarter, again, focusing on the heat pump water heater program, plus, of course, electric vehicles and e-bike alternatives as a major component of beneficial electrification. We hosted community workshops on the One Water Plan. You've heard quite a bit of this from our resource management group. It's our long-term plan to evaluate and implement strategies for water resiliency, especially in the face of climate change, coming off this recent drought and then followed by a series of atmospheric rivers and windstorms that battered our region for the first part of 2023. It's no surprise that we are seeing the direct influence of climate change on our water supplies, of course, also in other areas. And we were also able to implement enhancements to the MyCPAU online utility account management portal to make it easier for customers to pay their bills online, access energy, water, and electrification tools such as an electric vehicle and solar cost estimator, and the Water Smart portal, which includes a single sign-on, so somebody can log into MyCPAU and get access to this all this information, find out ways to reduce their energy and water consumption, and get access to our programs. There's also another benefit in terms of efficiency by accessing these online tools is that customers can sign up to receive leak alerts. So that's a win-win. Will help keep utility costs low. We've been able to refashion our website navigation to streamline the customer entry and experience and how people find information, creating more, let's say, intuitive modules and ways to find information on our programs, ways to save, for example. Interdepartmentally, we've successfully been working with the Planning and Department Services Department on green building and REACH codes as part of our sustainability focus. City Council approved the new REACH code in November of 2022, and it became effective in January 2023. Throughout the development process, we held a series of community workshops to gather feedback and input to influence the development of those codes. And another focus has been on streamlining the process and increasing the uptake of people installing heat pump water heaters. In this last quarter, we were able to create an instant heat pump water heater permitting process. The planning and development services staff, now they've developed a process where they went from a half an hour perhaps to review and approve a permit to no time to review and approve a permit, instantaneous. And that's for at least 50% of all people who apply for permits. Consider that a great win. So work on these initiatives and programs involves other city departments, such as the city manager's office, the IT department, and then this work extends to groups in utilities like customer service, resource management, billing, engineering, and operations, particularly when we are talking about impacts to the electric grid. We all work together to determine the safest, most reliable, practical, and best approach for how these developments roll out to the community. Working on tech advancements such as the outage management system and advanced metering infrastructure means that we're not handling this in a vacuum in the utilities department. It requires collaboration between all of the utilities divisions. For AMI, for example, we're in the beta phase installation for the electric, gas, and water meters in residential areas of the city. And I believe Dave told you, maybe my figure's out of date, we've installed over 1,100 meters to date. So we're continuing the progression of that particular project. Some of our new initiatives to highlight include that Water Smart portal. Again, it has been a great success to be able to launch that and integrate it with a single sign-on for MyCPAU, allowing customers to readily receive access to their information, their utility consumption. And then when it comes to government and outside agency focus, part of our success in effectively adopting the REACH code that we implemented at the beginning of this year is that we worked regionally with various other agencies through REACH code team meetings, and staff held leadership roles and speaking engagements to try to advance the idea of we really want to set out on a limb when it comes to our sustainability. We've continued our collaboration with educational institutes to recruit and retain talented workforce. So people who are coming out of the college arena, we'd like to let them know about the opportunities in utilities. We were actually able to successfully hire 4 electrical engineers through our efforts to work with Cal Poly in particular. When it comes to our initiatives, next slide, please. We're going to obviously continue our educational path to get information into the hands of our community members. Some of our members are working diligently on programs such as the outage management system and advanced metering infrastructure. You heard Dave talk about these projects as part of the technology roadmap. Collaboration is key because it impacts our customers in so many ways. On a public facing front, we want to make sure that we have a robust outreach strategy in place, but also internally between the utilities department, it's critically important that we are informing our internal stakeholders, our coworkers across the aisle about everything that's happening because it does impact the work that they do, as well as other city departments too. We are effective when we work together as a whole, as a city. So beneficial electrification remains a major priority for our sustainability and sustainability goals and sustainability and climate action plan. And it's going to be a big lift for us. We already recognize that. If we are to be successful, we city departments must come together as partners. And right now, what we're doing is working with the Public Works Department to identify electrification potential at city facilities. And we will need to continue our outreach and collaboration with educational institutions. I think you'll hear Anna talk about what we're doing in that area of workforce. And we know that climate change is not going away, and it's critical that we do partner with regional agencies. Our partners, such as various government agencies, nonprofits, environmental organizations, and even folks like the Northern California Power Agency and California Municipal Utilities Association, if we can work with them to establish regional contracts, joint contracts, take advantage of some economies of scale to roll out programs that will be available to people across the region, we may have the opportunity to improve upon our successes. So next slide, there we go, thank you. So in 2018, we developed these key performance indicators, these KPIs, and we are evaluating how we want to better refine these. Again, to some of my previous comments about defining metrics and how you measure success of collaboration is not always nuts and bolts. Here's a figure, you got so many people participating in a program. Yes, that can it can provide some vision on how customers might be coming to you, how people might be coming to you, how successful your outreach is. But Dean and I have been having conversations. We're having conversations with members of the strategic plan about what are the best KPIs for us moving forward. So we have the KPIs on this screen right now, talking about customer awareness for our programs, also customer satisfaction. Customers, we were able to receive a statistical response of close to 70% of our customers reporting that they would be very likely to recommend City of Palo Alto Utilities energy and water efficiency programs. So that's good. We want to continue asking questions like that and how customers are aware of our programs. Are we meeting their needs? Our last survey of residential customers, we asked about our usage of customer programs, and we received a percentage rate response of more than 50% of customers have taken advantage of our programs, and they're aware of our programs and they're satisfied with our programs. We found that most successful response in that particular survey was among residents who had participated in our flagship program, the Home Efficiency Genie. Now, I want to just note that we don't have a reliable benchmark right now for the current survey vendor that we're working with compared to our previous survey vendor because we don't have access to the data that we had with a previous vendor. So again, that's going to be another reason why we need to redefine these KPIs and determine what means success for us. So we'll be working with a new vendor through the California Municipal Utilities Association moving forward to survey our business customers and our residential customers every year. This is why you see the information on our business customer surveys here on this slide, because that was the most recent survey. So looking at receiving a rating about customer satisfaction, in the business survey, we received a rating of about 80% of customers saying that they were very happy with their work with the City of Palo Alto Utilities. We want to continue to raise that mark, but recognizing that the 85% mark ranking that we developed back in 2018 was also based on data from a past version of our utility strategic plan. And we want to go back and look at that particular survey and why did we develop that percentage? Is that a really good mark? Looking at trends for other municipal utilities in the region and investor-owned utilities in the region, what sort of marks are they using? What sort of metrics are they setting forth? And what is meaningful for us to help us continue to drive improvement in this area? And then we have been quite successful at achieving a number of the actions we've identified in the collaboration priority, which means we get to add more. So you'll see more coming to you in future updates, focusing on some of these key areas that I've identified, and you'll see a revision to some of these KPIs too. So with that, I will go ahead and pause to take any questions or comments.
I had a question about collaboration and just, I started binging podcasts, getting ready for this, and came across some other cities in our area that are, we're all kind of trying to do the same thing, encouraging people to electrify and having to deal with, I know we're unique in that we have a full utility, but there are others that have, residents that want to put solar on or whatever. This is happening everywhere. So I'm wondering, do we collaborate with other cities in any way? Or what kind of benchmarking or comparisons do we do to try and learn or share with other cities around us where maybe the residents are similar and we could maybe, I don't know, get any tips and tricks on how to either change usage, or there was one on microgrids in Fremont that was really interesting. So I was just curious, do we talk to other cities?
Well, of course, we recognize that it is a best practice to collaborate with other cities of the region as much as possible. We do participate in a number of regional committees that involve cities, even special districts in the county, also non-governmental organizations, environmental organizations, through some of those groups, such as one of the groups I mentioned, the REACH Code teams. That's a statewide initiative involving many different stakeholders, and we share best practices. What have you done in your area? What have we done? What have you done that's worked for you? What lessons have you learned? And what can we take back to our city? I believe that Palo Alto has been pretty progressive as it relates to our sustainability and climate action plan goals. In particular, really raising the bar. Our goals are even higher than the state, of course, as you know. And so sometimes we get to take on a little bit of a leadership role, saying, yes, it's been an uphill battle, but we've got ambitious goals, and we really want to continue on that trajectory. Sometimes we've been able to bring some organizations along, but another key group that we're doing a lot of work with is the Northern California Power Agency. We have engaged in some contracts with them somewhat recently, within the last few years, to offer some of those regional programs. We don't want to proliferate the installation of heat pump water heaters, perhaps just in Palo Alto. Of course, that's our focus here, but how can we take advantage of a regional contractor that can help share the information and increase the proliferation of those sort of measures across the region, thus increasing the success of that here in Palo Alto. So we're involved in other groups through NCPA, such as the Energy Efficiency Group. So those regional entities, those trade groups, other government agencies, that's a key part of our collaboration initiatives, recognizing how critical that is.
And if I could just add to that, as Catherine mentioned, we're a part of this Northern Power Association. There's 14 cities that are in that association. And so usually twice a year, we actually get together as directors and we actually sit down and talk a little bit about some of the initiatives of what's going on. We also talk about what kind of KPIs and what do you measure, and what are some of the measurements that you actually have? Because nobody ever wants to post these in the paper. And so it's a little difficult to try to get some of the results unless you're working through, a vendor that's been working with another city. But there's a lot of sharing that goes on at my level that we talk about. We actually spend one full day just on collaboration and talking about what is working for us, what's not working for them. As Catherine said, Palo Alto is kind of in the forefront on the whole electrification from these other cities. So they also turn to us to learn from us and find out what some of the pitfalls are, who have we used as contractors. So it's a sharing mechanism that we use, but it's also part of the whole strategic plan around KPIs that we talk about.
Commissioner Phillips.
I'm glad you mentioned KPIs. I think one of the issues, it sounds great to survey-based KPIs, but one of the problems with survey-based KPIs is they may provide you a leveling, but it doesn't provide you any idea of how you could potentially improve. So one of the things I would love to see is, are there any objective KPIs you track, such as when there's a complaint, what fraction of complaints are resolved to the satisfaction of the customer? How long is it till satisfaction? How many things are complained about that maybe you can't do anything about, but at least communicate? And even in this communication, these KPIs, again, this is great, and it seems like extremely strong performance to get in anything above 80%, or that for a utility or any government agency is probably quite the achievement. But it would also be good to see the ones who are not happy. Are there patterns in what they're, not happy about? And a lot of those are in the 50%. I think you mentioned, I forget what the survey participation was. So, just the thought going forward, it's great to see this. It is a little hard in context. As you say, it's impossible to customer service KPIs that could be more objective and looked at as well. Not that survey isn't objective, but it's, it is, it is kind of have the whole that it doesn't really say, okay, if you're not happy, why weren't you happy? Or if you are happy, why were you happy? Thank you.
Any other comments? Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry, Commissioner Motter.
It seems like there was resounding success around the instant permitting for the heat pump water heater program. And I'm wondering if there are any other instant permitting opportunities that would ease a transition to new technology adoption for the service area. And whether you've evaluated kind of similar instantaneous permitting opportunities.
So we have made strides in streamlining the permitting process for other areas such as solar.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. in
That,
particular,
that's been a big focus for the last decade or two or so. And so the city has been able to reduce the length of time required to receive a permit for solar. I did not include that particular item in this presentation, this update. We did talk about it in our last update in October. Instantaneous, probably not. In many times in these sort of installations, we need to make sure that we are evaluating very important components such as the electrical panel capacity, what the electrical increase in demand may be. So there are safety aspects to that. There are real logistical aspects to that. Do we have the electrical load available to meet the increased demand? If you install XYZ or EV in that case, if we're going to use letters. So in many situations, an instant permit wouldn't really be feasible. We want to make sure that we're being safe,
of course,
in all of these areas. But yeah, I think it was a great success that we were able to figure out a way to make this permit approval process online and essentially instantaneous, especially since it's a major goal of the Sustainability and Climate Action Plan.
Yeah.
But yeah, we'll continue to evaluate other opportunities to reduce the length of time for permitting in other areas.
Great. It also seems like you've had a lot of success in some of the internship programs that you've been developing. I'm wondering whether there are any, and yet like Cal Poly San Luis Obispo is, still pretty far away. Have you been also engaging more local colleges and universities that might provide at least like master's level, some summer internship and other opportunities? And do you have an internship program that the commissioners could help advertise?
Yes, we actually do. I will be hopefully bringing on board an intern within the next couple or 3 weeks. And I specifically recruited this intern through work with the Northern California Power Agency. So by that recruitment, the requisition went out to a variety of colleges locally and far. So as local as Stanford to San Jose State, Santa Clara, et cetera. So not just on the administration side, the division that I work in, but our resource management group in particularly tends to recruit interns throughout the summer and also climate fellows through other educational institutions such as Stanford. And we look for other programs in which we can bring folks on board to help us on an ongoing basis or for special projects. Yes, that's absolutely a fantastic resource that we like to tap into as much as possible.
Well, let me know how I can help.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening, commissioners, and welcome to our new commissioners. I am Jonathan Abenshine, Assistant Director in Utilities, and heavily focused on the Sustainability and Climate Action Plan right now. But I'm here talking to you as the lead for the Sustainability, Finance, and Infrastructure Priority 4. This is a priority in transition. When this priority was adopted in 2018, the focus, it was called the Finance and Resource Optimization Priority. And the focus for that priority at that time was on financial efficiency, looking for ways to control increases in costs, as well as making sure that we were taking proper care of our infrastructure. And over the, we made some important gains in some of those areas over the years, and heard some feedback from at our last conversation with the UAC that there wasn't enough strategic meat in this priority at that point. And we took a good look. We took that feedback and agreed. One of the things that had changed over those last few years was the increased focus and increased partnership in the utilities department on achieving the city's ambitious 80% reductions in carbon emissions by 2030 climate goals. And all of our financial and infrastructure efforts were starting to be shaped by this partnership. So we took a look at this priority and reassessed, declared victory on some of the things that we adopted in 2018, consolidated some things, and we have a new set of priorities that we want to highlight for you tonight. So here you see the strategies from the Finance and Resource Optimization, or the priority as it was constituted before. The mission has shifted only slightly. So we continue to have a focus on efficient resource usage, but with the addition of sustainability as a really explicit part of this priority. One of the things when we did this strategic plan back in 2018, sustainability, we really assessed sustainability to be already sort of an integral part of the utilities mission. And so it really didn't have a highlighted section within the strategic plan. But in 2020, with the really honed, sharp focus on how do we actually achieve these 80 by 30 goals, sustainability, our focus has shifted from everyday sustainability to really a dramatic transition. So what we had in our previous strategies was a focus on really taking a look at our pace of infrastructure and investment and maintenance, which was in reasonable shape in 2018, but there were some gaps that we really needed to focus on. And we spent time over those couple of years, honing our internal reporting and getting our infrastructure investment back to where it needed to be. And some of the there's a lot of internal work that was done as part of those strategies. Some of the results more visible results that you might have seen is the regular reporting that we're now doing in the quarterly reports on infrastructure status. And we've identified gaps. So when we brought the wastewater rates to you all this year and to the city council, we built in an effort, a sustained effort over several years to rebuild our regular investment in our sewer laterals. And that was a direct outgrowth of all of the work that we did to identify gaps in our infrastructure investment. Some of the so the work around infrastructure, we need to maintain our efforts in these areas and keep up, but we feel like we can consolidate some of these strategies into a single strategy and really highlight some of the other more long-term strategic efforts that we're undertaking. So moving on to the next slide. We have a new set of strategies here that reflect some of the new work that we've taken on in the last few years. Strategy 1 is a consolidation of some of the infrastructure and maintenance work that had been embodied in the previous strategies for this priority. So we want to maintain and we want to enhance the infrastructure maintenance and investment programs that we've developed over the last few years. So that needs to remain a focus. And we are in a position at this point where we're re-examining our energy supply plans. We're in the middle of our electric integrated resource plan. And some of the major things that we're going to be looking at or are looking at through that plan include we have a milestone coming up with our federal hydropower contract in 2024. So deciding, how we want to move forward with that. We also have we have laid off one of our transmission projects, or our transmission project, a share in the California, Oregon transmission project that's coming back to us. So evaluating what role that transmission line may or may not play in our long-term energy portfolio. And as part of this, we're also, there is an element of looking at what the load growth associated with the sustainability with our transition to an electrified community is going to look like, and how we manage that load growth. So all of those factor in there. At the same time, we're in the process of looking at what our water supply needs to look like for the future. And so this is our One Water plan that's currently in development. We also, as we look at transitioning to an electrified community, electric and gas infrastructure is going to be really heavily impacted. So developing and starting to implement plans to manage those transitions is a really critical part of this priority as well. Part of modernization is making sure that we are equipped to accommodate new technologies on the grid. It's not just about increasing capacity and to accommodate electrification. It's also about modernizing to be able to handle things like solar, smart panels, being able to provide price signals and other ways for people to manage their loads to run during times when it saves cost and reduces emissions on the grid overall. And one of the ways we're going to get at that is through working with our Sustainability and Climate Action Plan Committee on scoping a reliability and resiliency strategic plan. There's a really broad list of technologies that I think we're interested in looking at, and we want to make sure that we capture the priority areas that our community and our policymakers are interested in focusing on. So that's something we'll be working on. In addition to transitioning our infrastructure, managing declining sales in a gas utility is something that's going to have financial impacts, and we need to make sure that those who maybe are unable to or lagging in transitioning to an electric home, for example, are still able to heat their homes and maintain their quality of life without excessive impacts on their pocketbook. And managing a utility through declining sales is a complicated exercise. It's going to require some planning. The next two strategies relate to partnering on a citywide level. Utilities has a major role in the Sustainability and Climate Action Plan, especially in the climate area. And part of that involves assessing what it's going to take to actually make this transition from a financial standpoint and what sort of funding mechanisms are needed, what role the utility plays, what impact it has on rates for the utility, and how we manage that transition and develop the funding sources that we need. Next slide, please. And then in general, utilities is playing a large role in the Sustainability and Climate Action Plan. There is a work plan that we're currently working to get adopted by Council in May. And this recognizes the major utilities role. Some of the actions that I can note here are completion of an electric vehicle strategic plan to guide the sort of infrastructure investment that we need to do, and then partnering with other departments on establishing programs. The sort of premier program that we've developed in the last few months, in the last year, is the heat pump water heater program. But we have several other programs in the work plan that we'd like to get working on around whole home electrification as we start to modernize areas of Palo Alto, commercial rooftop HVAC, and partnerships with our major facility owners, many of whom have their own sustainability goals, to see ways that we can build custom partnerships with them to help reduce emissions from commuters and from their facilities themselves. Next slide. So accomplishments. So we've kicked off our IRP discussions with the UAC. We've had our initial meetings, I believe, in December, and we have more to come. The One Water plan is in progress. We've had 2 community meetings on that, and the plan itself is currently in development. We're in the process of doing consultant analysis on that. We've had some very early discussions on a gas infrastructure transition plan. We've put some requests into the FY24 budget. The grid modernization study is largely complete. We're talking about how to bring updates on that, but we are already planning specific implementation in certain neighborhoods. So that's already getting off the ground. Similarly to the infrastructure study, we're also working on a financial transition plan study. We've done a little bit of analysis on this in the past that we brought to the UAC, but we need a more comprehensive analysis. Strategy 6 is around the SCAP funding study. We have a draft scope that we're ready to put out, but we're working through stakeholder conversations, both with the SCAP committee and internally. And there's a funding issue that needs to be sorted out. There will be some discussions next Tuesday with the Finance Committee, or actually over the entire month of May with the Finance Committee on the budget generally, but funding for this study is part of that as well. And as far as accomplishments go, a lot of this is really just, I think I've covered it in the previous slide. I'm sorry, can I get the next slide? So initiatives in progress. Obviously, I noted a number of studies that are already underway, and that we are preparing for modernization of the first neighborhood under the electric grid modernization plan. We're engaging with the SCAP committee on a variety of SCAP related work plan and programmatic items. And of course, one of our major focuses is on the success of the advanced heat pump water heater pilot program. We have 400 plus signups, and we're working on getting our production rates up to be able to churn through those as quickly as we can. Like I said, this is a priority in transition, so we don't have new key performance indicators for you yet tonight. I do expect we'll keep one from the previous way the previous priority was constituted, which was maintaining a utility bill that is below the average of our neighboring cities. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any commissioner questions? Commissioner Forcell?
I have a very small and specific question. You mentioned that the grid modernization study has been completed. Is that available to the public or to commissioners? Where can we go if we want to learn more about that?
So we're talking internally about how and when to bring an update. I don't know if you have a timeline yet.
No, we have not set a timeline, and it's the high level. I mean, this is not the detail down to looking at your house and seeing if you're going to get a transformer in your front of your home or anything like that. So this all we did was just do a high level of what we thought was going to be needed.
Right. Sorry, I wasn't assuming it was
Oh, okay.
at the
So I
per
just wanted-
property level. I meant whatever is the study that's been completed.
Well, and I guess that's what the internal conversation is happening right at this period of time is that, do we bring that out where people then are the community is going to ask 1,000 questions off of that high level design. And I'm concerned about that. We're just going to get bombarded by all these questions, and I won't have any detailed questions to be able to go to them and talk about it. That's why we're talking about how we're going to release that and how, and should we release it in the first place? So we're still discussing that.
If there's any advance copy for curious commissioners, that would certainly be of interest.
Yes, understand.
Thank you.
Commissioner Metz?
Yes, I had sort of the same question about the grid modernization study, but also on packet page 62, which is presentation page 24. And the question is about, on the grid modernization is when will the commission see it, not necessarily the public. But on page 62, when will UAC see the plans that are referenced in there, particularly S2, S3, S4, and S5?
All right, so I'll address them one by one. So the electric integrated resource plan and the One Water plan, that's S2 and S3, the UAC has already started to see these plans. I don't have the schedule in front of me for when you're going to see them next, but and apologies if I'm putting you on the spot. Carla, Assistant Director Carla Daly may have some information on when that's coming up, when those are coming up next with the commission.
Thank you. Yeah, the One Water plan did get delayed a little bit with some of the staff resource shifting around. We had to do around rates and the financial plans. And so we're still hoping to ultimately get that to council by the end of this calendar year, which means that you would probably be seeing it again late summer.
So moving on to S4 and S5. Thank you, Carla. I think we've answered the question about the grid modernization study. The gas infrastructure and gas financial transition plans are really, we don't even have available to the commissioners. And then there's the electric reliability and resiliency strategic plan. I don't have a timeline for that yet. It really depends on engagement with the SCAP committee on scoping for that effort, because that was something the council assigned to the SCAP committee as a specific area of focus for them.
Are you referring to S6 or S4?
The small bullet under S4, which may or may not be readable, unfortunately. But the electric reliability and resiliency strategic plan, that's something we'd like to talk with the commission about, but we really need to get the bandwidth from the SCAP committee to talk to them first, because this was specifically assigned to them as a work item.
So S4 is kind of moved into the SCAP subcommittee.
So S4 includes all types of infrastructure work that's needed to accommodate the community transition. So there's work to be done on grid modernization, building capacity to accommodate electrification. There's work to be done on retirements of the gas system and the order and method in which those would be done. And then there's the modernization of the system and the use of technology to expand the grid more efficiently, and the type of work that's needed to be done to accommodate flexible loads and new technologies, digital technologies on the grid that have both impacts and benefits.
So is there kind of a ballpark timeline? I mean, I know those are a bundle of different things, but
Yeah, so right now, the primary focus of the SCAP committee is on getting the SCAP itself, the actual plan adopted and the work
Okay.
plan adopted. And I think as we get through May, we'll start to focus more on some of these work items. It's a question of which ones end up getting prioritized first, because they have a very ambitious list of things to engage on, ranging from new programs like the commercial HVAC program, to the SCAP funding study, to these other studies like the Reliability and Resiliency Strategic Plan, the EV Strategic Plan.
right. It seems like they need to be pretty tightly coupled. I mean, one of the
They
discussions
are,
we had
yes.
last year was that SCAP was on one track and utility was on a different, track that was, say, less aggressive time-wise. And I'm assuming they merged at some point.
Yeah, there's been a lot of convergence on infrastructure efforts and the SCAP timeline. So yeah, there is. And I think there were two parts to your question. I caught the piece on convergence, but I think the first part of your question was on, if you could repeat it, it would be.
Well,
that'd
the
be
broad
helpful.
question was when will we see the plans? But
Yeah,
the biggest part of it was the question that Commissioner Forcell asked, which is, the electric grid plan, because that drives, that makes SCAP possible or not.
right. Yeah, no, and the philosophy behind the planning. So the first budgets for grid modernization are in the FY 2024 capital budget. And there's a lot of money devoted. We have the funding built into our rate plan, $300 million for grid modernization and capacity expansions. And the timelines, are aggressive. I don't have specific timelines that I can share, but the philosophy has been, get the improvements done to get out of the way so that the community can electrify at whatever pace the community can accommodate.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you. I just wanted to give you, I realized, some positive feedback on the change in focus of the priority, and all of the new strategies. That's kind of a big deal, actually.
Good.
And I also want to recognize you're still doing all the old strategies, right? But I think it's great in the fact that there's like, as Commissioner Metz refers to, sort of a convergence of what the city's talking about on the sustainability side, really being brought into the actual planning process for the utility around the gas utility financial transition. And I think a strategic plan for EVs. And obviously the grid modernization is a very active area. So all these things, I just want to give you positive feedback that it's really great to see this priority number 4 kind of overhauled in this way.
Thank you. I think with the level of focus that the level of time that I'm spending in these interdepartmental teams right now, it's just been really amazing to see everybody come together and start pulling in the same direction. And it's really happened over the last couple of years and has come from, I think, a real focus from both the council and this commission on, just emphasizing how much of a community priority it is. Everybody does seem to be speaking with one voice on that. So.
Commissioner Phillips, did you?
I have a process question. Somebody mentioned this was a 5-year plan adopted in 2018. Is there now another 5-year plan coming up, or do we just roll forward modifying this one?
So I think that our thought process was there's not a lot changing in from the 5 years that what we put together in 2018. Our mission statement still is staying the same. Our goals are pretty much the same. As you can see in what Jonathan is talking about, that's the biggest piece in this plan. We do have workforce issues that we still deal with, but it's a key component of our strategic plan. So our idea wasn't to overhaul and look for new areas that we were going to look at. We felt that these still are the areas that we should be focusing on and trying to get into the day-to-day from a utilities perspective.
So it'd be a rolling plan, in other words, not another ground zero exercise of saying, what are we going to look like in 2028?
Yeah, exactly.
I just wanted to sort of echo what my fellow commissioners have said. I think they brought some good points, and it is a nice change to see. And then one little nit, I guess, under S3, which is the One Water plan, we have spent a fair amount of time talking about clean water here. And so I'm just wondering if you wanted to add efficient, sustainable, clean water supply. I know it's somewhat inherent, but given the added focus lately.
Yes, and I would say we will not be considering any water that's not clean and drinking water quality.
No, understood. That's why but because we have it on our calendar, something to be talking about, I'm just throwing it out there to maybe emphasize it.
Sure.
Along with the other.
Yeah, we can add that.
Thank you.
Good evening, Commissioners, Councilmember. We'll be going over, or I'll be going over the Priority 1 workforce for us this evening. So as my colleagues have mentioned about the strategic plan, we did go through the various areas of the business and identified workforce as one of the areas that we want to put some focus on. And some of the strategies we have, just to remind everyone and then inform everyone here, is that some of the strategies that we had was to establish CPAU as an organization where we can hire or have experienced and proud employees who would like to work here, as well as have a place that attracts skilled employees, and then provide alternative workforce solutions to achieve our business objectives. And some of the accomplishments that we've done over the years is we've established a system operators training program that has been in place for a couple of years now. We've had success in having 3 operators in the program. And we're also working on a utilities compliance program as apprenticeship program as well. We have, just so that I don't go through this whole list because you've already read through, I'm just going to highlight a couple of them. We have worked through with HR to develop HR department liaisons to help speed up the recruitment process. And that has actually helped a lot in the past 2 years. We've actually, or in the past year, we've increased our recruitment and new hires by 30%. With the assistance of the liaisons. Otherwise, it would have been a lot slower process since we only have one HR person that's dedicated to us. And, we've hired about 4 electric engineers, and that is in part of attending in-person career fairs, and at San Luis Obispo, as well as we've gone to Sac State and recently San Jose State, just reaching out, going out to the community and the colleges to bring our presence there so that they can know that, the utilities, City of Palo Alto is a place to come work. And we've also conducted a employee satisfaction survey. We will be going through those results and working on some of the strategies or tasks from that survey. Next slide, please. And then our initiatives in progress. We have, sorry. We are working on, we have developed a template that provides like some training. It's a training template for each classification that lets them know, lets our employees know, like what's the next step or what does it take to get to the next step in their career. We have that in water, gas, wastewater engineering. We're working on refining that. And then once that is good and can be replicated, it'll be spread over to the next divisions. Let's see, I'm sorry, I have this elsewhere. And well, some of the things that we're working on too is exploring some daycare options. The city has recently submitted, put out a survey for our employees about what our daycare needs are. They have also, I think in terms of, they've also submitted, I think it was not a survey, but Palo Alto employees who have school-aged children can now attend Palo Alto Unified School District as well. And we're also looking at retention and recruitment options, such as, just to briefly highlight, in the past negotiations with SEIU, they did talk about a recruitment bonus and a retention bonus, as well as flexibly staffed recruitment options. So that's where if you have a higher classification, you can post it and underfill it at a lower classification. And then when the individual is ready for promotion, then that's when they can move into that position. It helps in terms of recruitment as well as employee morale. Next slide, I think that's it. And then our next slide would be the KPIs. Our employee turnover rate, one of the KPIs is to be within 10% or less than 10% of our turnover rate. We haven't been meeting that. It's really difficult. We have had vacancies of 40 in the past couple of years, and last year we've reached 57. We did add new positions though in fiscal year 23, so that's actually reflected here in 22. But it's even despite the additional liaisons, we still have a little bit of trouble filling the positions. And then our next KPI, filling positions, 90% of positions annually. Of course, that's also happening as well. We're within drop deck down to 77% of that vacancy, filled authorized filled positions. And next slide. So here is just a bar chart of where the positions or the vacancies are within the divisions. Our highest ones continue to be electric operations. Next one was electric engineering in fiscal year 20 or calendar year 22, but that's because I did have those new positions. I think it was 3 engineering positions that we added in the mid-year. And then water, gas, wastewater operations is a little bit after that. Next slide. And then that's it for me. Any questions for me?
Vice Chair Sharif.
Thanks. Can we go back to the first slide you had? That would be the easiest for me.
Okay. First. The mission and strategies.
No, actually, it was the second slide. Sorry.
Okay.
Yes. I was curious, first of all, how did the employee satisfaction survey turn out? What did we learn from that?
Actually, we still have to provide some analysis on that satisfaction survey. We did have, I don't know, if Dave, do you remember how many filled out the survey?
Yeah, like 103, 105,
103,
about half.
about 50% filled the satisfaction survey.
Okay, but we haven't analyzed it yet.
Yeah.
So it's not really an accomplishment list yet. I mean, I know we did it, but
We still
not really.
we still have a lot of
We
work.
don't know anything from doing it.
We still have a lot of work to do on that survey. Yes.
So I guess I was going to ask, have we made any comparisons about how our hiring and workforce really is compared to, other publicly owned utilities, say Santa Clara, Alameda, I mean, they're obviously they're probably struggling with some of this, are we doing the same as them? Or are we doing worse than them? What does that look like?
No, I mean, that's a good question. We have not done that survey.
So I would encourage us to do that, because I don't think our KPIs really tell us what we want to know. I mean, it looked to me like on the last slide that we haven't really made any progress, frankly. I mean, we still, from year to year, it looked like we had a similar amount of vacancies and that kind of stuff. So the question really was, if everyone's having huge problems hiring, that makes some sense. But if we're doing much worse than our peers, that also would tell us something. And then the one thing we haven't really talked about on this is, are our salaries competitive? I mean, does our hiring have to do with that? Or, what's really going on in terms of issues with hiring?
So Commissioner Sharp, SEIU just recently received a new contract. And part of the comp study that is done, Alameda is in that comp study, Santa Clara, Roseville, Anaheim. There's one more, two that are down south. Oh, Long Beach, city of Long Beach, from a gas perspective. There's a couple handfuls of comp studies that were done. And, I think the thing is, if you look at the comp study and you look it out from full benefited positions, we're below and behind Santa Clara. But, we're above Alameda. We're above some of the other areas down south. We are well above the city of Long Beach from just a gas side, but Long Beach only has a gas system. So I think the thing is that, we asked council to take a hard look at what it would take if we were going to be equal to Santa Clara from a utilities perspective. And I had gotten some feedback that they were kind of willing to go there, but I think what ended up happening is that there are still some issues with trying to deal with SEIU around that, because again, this is a unit that is about 200 employees from an SEIU standpoint, but the unit itself is like about 600, 650 for the entire city. So they're having a difficult time trying to explain to the other 400 members, why is it that utilities is special? Why is it that there is a separate cost rate for utilities where there's not one from a public works worker or a CSD worker or something like that? So it's a balance that I think that SEO is trying to balance out as well. And I think that, as we've talked about before, I've been very open about this, that, I think it's a little bit of an unfortunate situation that our folks are not IBEW, and that they are with SEIU, because there's no comparisons then at that point, where IBEW, they will compare to all the NCPA members, PG&E, they can go down south. It's a union that is well represented from a utilities perspective for gas and electric. So I think there are issues that we just have to work out. And we were able to make some moves a little bit for the utility side. They did get a little bit of a larger increase than the general fund folks will say that are on that other side. But it wasn't enough that I think that we're still having difficulties trying to attract folks to actually come to Palo Alto in those types of positions, in those critical positions that we have.
Thanks, Dean. That was really helpful. Any sense at all how Alameda and Santa Clara are doing in terms of the ability to fill their vacancies?
So it's interesting is that I have had some conversations with them, and they are actually moving forward with their very first ever, from the history of their city, to having an apprenticeship program, because they are losing linemen and they are not being able to replace them. I think, knock on wood, that our folks are not willing to jump over there. They do have openings. I was looking at it last week. They actually have 4 lineman classifications that are opened, and they're going to fill them with apprentices and try to put on an apprenticeship program and try to grow within. Alameda is down by 1. Lodi, I did talk to Lodi last week at a commissions meeting. They're only down by 2. And Roseville, they're full. So I think getting away from the Bay Area portion of it has helped from just the cost of living. But they're starting to see some changes in Alameda and like I said, with Santa Clara.
Hey, thank you very much. That was very helpful.
Commissioner Mater.
Do you see a deficit from like a number of applications or a number of qualified applicants?
Hi, this is Tabitha Boatwright. I am not only the executive assistant for utilities, I am also one of the human relations liaisons that Anna had mentioned. We actually are seeing quite a rise in applications. That's not the issue. The issue is we have a lot of attrition happening. So what's happening is we have people that have been in Palo Alto for a few decades and they are leaving, therefore having positions open. We are taking the people that haven't been here as long and promoting them, therefore leaving a position open. And it just so happens this is happening consequent. It's just like a ladder factor. So we will have open positions and then we'll fill the position. And now that we're fully staffed, it's like, okay, I feel comfortable now, I can go ahead and retire. Well, even though I just filled 2 positions, then 2 leads retired. So it's kind of like, okay, well, now we need to fill those. So it's almost as if it's a mirror instead of, oh, we're completely full. It's like once we're full, then we drop back down again. And then we promote people, and now we're up higher, and now the lower level positions are now open. So the past 5-6 months, the positions that I filled have been extensive, and we're doing it at a much faster pace. And the applicants that I am receiving are just really appreciative of how quick it is, how much the turnaround is. So it's not that we aren't getting the people. We actually, one application for, of course, is sustainability. When you mention that word, everyone wants to be involved. We were open for 3.5 weeks. Within the first 2 days, we had 57 applicants. So it's not a lack of applications. It's simply as soon as we hire someone, someone else leaves. Some people want to live closer to home, as Director Batchelor mentioned. People come here because it's an amazing place to be, and then they realize it's really far away. So they leave and they end up going back. And even though with the line crew, that is a difficult position because they work really hard and it's sometimes all the time. Even though some Alameda, they are only down one, they're also a much smaller crew. The crews that we require for the amount that we have, we're down because we have a much larger crew that we're expected. That's, if we only needed 4 people, we wouldn't be down at all, but we need 12 people. So that's why it seems like we're down much farther. So it also depends on how much you're looking at in perspective of the types of crews. So we have to take that into consideration as well. But yeah, a lack of applications, that's not our issue.
If I could add to that, as both Anna and Tabitha talked about, we're starting to see some really qualified folks come through some of these other open positions. The key problem is if you looked at the chart there that Anna brought up, it's mostly in the electric engineering and the electric operations side. The problem is trying to find linemen. We're not getting applications for linemen. We're not getting applications for engineering. So we made the decision, a hard decision, that we're going to go to Sac State and we're going to go to San Luis Obispo. They have power engineering programs there. They're the only 2 in California. And so we have made the decision that we're going to go after the young folks and bring them in and train them just like we do with our apprentices and hope that they stay, that they'll grow with us and they'll stay. And so far the feedback has been from the 4 of them. They're really excited about being here and that it's more than what they ever thought it was going to be, because they thought that they were just going to be coming in and sitting down next to someone for the next years to come. But they're actually running programs. They're actually running they were asking to actually do engineering work that they're actually learning that they learned in school. So, because we need them. And so I think that there's a light at the end of the tunnel for that portion of it, but unfortunately it's just a long trade. And the thing is, when we do our apprenticeships, they're 4-year apprenticeships. So you bring somebody in and we don't have, I wish I could say that I could bring 6 apprentices on today, but the problem is I only got 3 trained linemen. So there's a ratio that you have to have. And so there's only 3 apprentices in getting trained, and they were in their 2nd year now. They'll be able to get into their 3rd year and they'll actually become hot apprentices where they're actually able to work on hot lines and at the voltage. And then we can start at square one and bring on 2 more, 3 more brand new folks. But it's a 3-year process, and then they will actually graduate out, and we'll cross our fingers that we're able to keep them.
Commissioner Phillips.
Thank you for all that. At least when I looked at this number of 77% positions filled, it was pretty dire. So I'm glad to hear at least parts of it seem to be looking up, which is great to hear. Kind of the question I had is, how much is this, if I went back to 2018, would this be a problem, or is this a new sort of COVID, post-COVID problem emblematic of a lot of other companies who are saying we're having a hard time in retaining people, the great resignation, et cetera, et cetera? Or has this been a chronic problem or a new problem?
As far as linemen go, that's been kind of a consistent issue. A lot of linemen come from far away, they work here, and then once they're here for their 4 years, they're fully trained, they get everything that they need, they go back home to where they came from. So that's an issue that all of us handle, not just Palo Alto. As far as the other, I'm not going to say the great resignation occurred to Palo Alto. What did occur to Palo Alto, though, is the event when we closed down and everyone, or most of us, of course, our engineering and our operations were not in this situation, where City Hall closed down and everyone worked from home. There were a couple people who did not. However, most of City Hall did. 2 years, little bit more than 2 years, and then they started slowly coming back. For a lot of people, they liked working from home. And when they started having to come back, there was a fear. And so a lot of them resigned because of that. And some of them went for other jobs where they get to permanently work from home. Palo Alto, we're currently now at a 2 days in, 3 days at home. So a lot of people were okay with that, but we did lose a number of people in engineering for that reason. And they could go and consult. They could work from home. They didn't have to come in. We did what we could to maintain the staff that we have, but that was a big reason that we lost some administrative type staff, not operations or the water, gas, wastewater engineering crew.
Thank you.
Councilmember Long.
Yes, thank you. I had some preliminary conversations with Director Batchelor about this, but this is a problem throughout our hiring in the city that we just can't get it up to staff, and that's just backing us up in everywhere. Unfortunately, this department becomes the poster child for that with this kind of vacancy rate. That's not a negative. I'm just saying that just emphasizes how big a problem it is. I was requesting the other night that we actually have a study in this budget, a consultant to come in and do a departmental analysis of just what else can we do in addition to what you've got on your slide, in addition to what Ms. Boatright just recap, because every department is different, as you pointed out, and even within the department it's different. But this is just so critical for what you guys all have to accomplish that I just think we have to double down and invest in our people one way or another and figure out these new ways of doing recruiting. So I'm going to keep beating that drum. One of the questions I want to ask the new liaison, the HR liaison, is are we getting offers turned down after we offer these people? And if so, do we have sort of a no thank you and why that happens?
Actually, there has been a few positions that we have received a thank you, but no thank you. And that was based on salary. We offer the salary that we offer. Our salaries are based on what council approves. We are not in the private sector. We're public. So whatever our salaries are is based on what council says we can and cannot do. We have unions, but they negotiate with council. So we have had 3 positions that have actually turned us down, and they said it was based on financial standings. So
yeah, on certain of those classifications, there are some changes coming that haven't been rolled in yet, so that will help. But as we all know, in hiring, it's usually not just salary that's a problem of either recruitment or retention. And we all know a lot of them, including the commute and so on. But I would encourage you to be really aggressive. I'm glad that you're taking your own initiative and creating your own HR liaisons and making stuff happen in the trenches. I really salute that. And I'd be very aggressive with the HR department and continue to say, whatever. I mean, for example, a couple of points in your slide, you said, we are exploring digital ads. Well, don't explore. Let's just run them and see what happens, right? And there was another one about, I can't think of it, but I think you should just take action and get some stuff done, and ask for what's that old phrase? Forgive. Thank you, Lisa. Ask for forgiveness later if you're too aggressive, because this is a problem that's holding back major stuff, like our whole, SCAP and electric grid and so on. So I believe it's close to a crisis for the city, and you guys can really impact our city in a positive way by plugging these holes. And I went over to page 37, and in calendar year 22, you hired 24, which is great, and we had 23 separations and 5 retirements. So we're behind by 3 people at the end of the year after all that work, and we still can't get anything done. So I won't keep beating on it, but I think you can help by pushing others in the organization to help you get what you need.
As far as the digital advertising, we actually spoke to the director of HR and the city manager, and I got their permission. So we actually did run a digital billboard right outside IKEA for 3 months. And it said, come work for Palo Alto. And we did 2 different advertisements. It was actually quite beautiful. Thank you. And whether or not we impacted anyone, I don't know, because HR has a, how did you hear from us? And that wasn't one of the options. So I don't know how well we did with that, but it ran for 8 seconds every 60 seconds. So it was and it brightly lit up the whole, you could see it during the day and at night. So it was,
That's great.
It was really nice.
Just keep
So
testing things, see what.
there
see what
are
works.
things that we are exploring that are outside of the box, so to speak, to kind of get people's attention, because that's kind of what we need. And that's who we are. That's, I also wanted to mention that although our numbers look high, we are the largest department in the entire city. So you can't compare us to HR where there's only 8 staff people and they're understaffed if they're down 1 person. So I just want to make sure that everyone's aware of that
It's not,
fully
the-
staffed. you
it's
have
not the number of
largest-
heads, it's that it's
Yeah.
down 23% from where you want to be.
Yeah.
That's the critical
Yeah,
factor.
we have bad numbers, but I just want to, it looks better if we break out fiber. So thank you, guys.
Commissioner Forso.
Just one quick question. It's been a great discussion. Anna Vuong, is that your name? Yes, brought up in passing I believe the Palo Alto School Board has instituted a new policy where city employees' children can attend Palo Alto schools. I'm just curious, obviously it's too soon for new data. Is there a buzz about it? Are you finding that what's your gut feeling on how helpful that will be in recruitment and retention? Is it a big deal? Is it not really much of a deal?
Actually, it is a huge deal for a few reasons. We actually had employees that were here years ago who put themselves on the lower housing list. They had worked here for years, but their children couldn't go to school here. So there was like a big commute for them just to take their children to school, pick their children up. And she eventually, after 8 years being on the list, got an apartment so her daughter can go to school here. So it is a huge ordeal that your children go to the Palo Alto School District, and B, to actually have your children close by. So if you're at work, your children are here. You're not 20 miles away or 30 miles away, and your school calls and says, your child just threw up, you need to come pick them up. Okay, I'll be there in an hour and a half. No worry. As a parent, that's like devastating. You're now worried, you're nervous, and you're driving. That's not a good combination. So that's a huge step for us. As far as advertising, Chantel Gaines, who is the deputy city manager, she is the one who's promoting this, and she is promoting it crazy. It did just start, but it is going to be a big deal, and she's putting it everywhere. So in our recruitments, it will start to be a little blurb in when we post. So it will be a big thing. We just need to figure out what the details are. So when we're asked, we know.
Can I just following up, because now I might be confused, because you talked about housing and school. And are you saying they're linked, or if an employee has school-age children and they're here, they can go to the PAUSD schools?
No, I was just saying how important it is for Palo Alto employees to have their children close, that some of the employees got put on the housing list so their children could come here. So that's a huge impact, that they were willing to move here just so their children could go here.
But to go back to answer your question, yes, that is correct. So one of the advantages in this program that's just launched, I believe council just approved it this week or last week?
Which program?
The childcare.
You mean the child going to school here?
School here, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's brand new. So what this means is that an employee can actually, once they get in, so there's a lotto number that they have to get in, but once they get in, their child will be in school at Palo Alto from kindergarten that they were able to get in they're in all the way to the 12th grade if they want to with this program. So there's definitely advantages. So hopefully, this will be something from a retention as well as an attraction portion of it. And they can apply every year to bring their child. So once they're in, though, they're actually in. And one of the reasons that I heard that reason why PSD was willing to do this is they're starting to get low attendance in their school. And so the idea was, why not try to explore this with them?
Okay, Commissioner Croft. I had another question about, it kind of was a comment in passing that there's only one HR person dedicated to hiring all these positions. Could you guys comment on the resource? Because it seems like, hiring one position is really hard. Hiring 57 positions is like, do we just need more people working on the hiring itself?
Well, that was a misconception. Utilities pays the salary for one full-time HR person. So HR has a staff of recruiters, but there is a dedicated recruiter for utilities. So yes, that is a lot of work for one person, which is why we created the, HRLs, and there are 3 of us. So, and that was for our benefit as well as for HR's benefit. We can control it. We can take on a lot more. So if one person can handle, 4 recruitments, and there's 4 of us now, we can recruit quite a bit more. And then each one of us has our own group, and we have meetings every week about how we're doing. Does anyone need help? What's happening? And once you start a recruitment and it's actually off and running and you're receiving applications, you can move on to another recruitment and make that process happen. Then when the recruitment closes, you set up the interviews. So, I mean, there's a pattern. It doesn't all have, you don't stop because one recruitment is happening. So you can actually recruit multiple at one time, but there is a limit that everyone can do because we do have our own regular jobs too. This is just, and even the HR person that we do have, she is dedicated to utilities for recruiting, but she does have other duties that she has to do. That's part of that. So it takes a lot to recruit one posting. But that's what we meant was there are more HR people, but there's one that we pay full-time. Her dedicated time is to us.
Yeah, it sounds like it's everybody, all hands on deck. And I guess the question is then, like, just do we have enough people? Do we need to, should we consider hiring? Are you guys feeling like everything's better now? I wasn't aware that this is a recent change, but how do we feel about the staffing level of the HR people? And
we actually don't have control over that. HR is their own department. So we're just blessed to be able to afford to have one. They are 2 recruiters short. They have been recruiting 4 recruiters. Unfortunately, I know that sounds kind of funny. Unfortunately, the recruitment world really isn't what it used to be. There used to be a time when everyone wanted to be a recruiter. Well, now everything is done online. So it's hard to get a human who wants to come into an office and actually do recruitment kind of stuff, because you can work for firms, recruiting firms, headhunters, and you don't go into the office. I've actually spoken to 3 different recruiting firms to help us out, and they're all remote. All the offices are remote. So when you're actually recruiting a recruiter and you have to come into the office, that's an interesting concept that they're really struggling with. They've had multiple recruitments and haven't gotten any. And then the couple that they have gotten, they haven't lasted because they realized they need to actually come in, and it wasn't just an error. Even though they only have to come in 2 days a week, it was still a burden for them. So that's the issue with HR recruitment currently right now.
Thank you. I think we'll take, or was there? Okay, I think we're going to take a quick 10-minute break. It's 8:15, so let's be back sharp at 8:25 before our last item. Thanks. Welcome back, everyone. We're now on item 4, which is the UAC, the operating and capital budget for the utilities. Are there any public comments?
This is Janelle Camion, Program Assistant. If anyone from the public would like to speak on item number 4, please raise your hand or dial *9 on your phone. No hands raised.
Thank you. Do we have a presentation?
We do, Commission. So as Chair Siegel just mentioned, this is really the proposal for the operation and the capital budgets for this year. And I'm just going to go ahead and turn it over to Alexander Harris, who is our Senior Business Analyst, that will walk you through on the electric side to start off with. So with that, Alex. You're gonna take that one. Okay.
Good evening, commissioners and council member. My name is Alexander Harris, and I will be providing an overview of the utilities but preliminary budget for fiscal year 2024. Here we have, next slide, please. Here we have an overview of the budget process and what comes next. Budget change requests were analyzed and reviewed by HR, OMB, and the City Manager's Office. We're here tonight to discuss the preliminary budget being proposed to the Finance Committee next week, and there will be some following workshops between Finance Committee and Council before Council ultimately adopts budget June 19th. A quick note. The proposed budget packet was officially released to the public after this staff report was published. So even though it's almost identical, it's preliminary in nature, the content contained within. Next slide, please. So this slide highlights new projects and a brief outline of recent grant opportunities. In reference to comments made earlier about the convergence of SCAP and utilities work, these grant opportunities enable the city to accelerate some large infrastructure investments necessary to meet our SCAP initiatives. So the grid modernization project was established in anticipation of the work needed to upgrade our infrastructure and support a 100% electrification future. There have been ongoing discussions about what's gonna be needed to upgrade the city's electric grid system. And with the initial high-level study that was completed in December last year, we're now taking a lot of the preparatory steps to make this actual. Some potential developments on the horizon are a second study to help determine and mitigate load impacts from battery, EV, solar usage, and evolving technologies such as remote control PV. We're going to continue a pilot program through fiscal year 24 to rebuild secondary networks and install transformers that would increase capacity to about 500 homes within Embarcadero, Lewis, and Amarillo. We also plan to complete a design by December 2023. So I know this sounds aggressive, but we're also positive about the grant opportunities. And then lastly, we hope to construct the first 10% of the system spring 2024. This may potentially be a design build with further details to be smoothed out. The FTTP, I'll quickly go over the next project. So the FTT project was added for establishing a new service that will provide broadband internet to the community. A contract amendment was recently approved this week on Monday. That references report number 2303-1215. The contract amendment would provide program management for the construction of the backbone and phase 1 of the FTTP. Also network ops and tech support, because the city would be an internet service provider or an ISP. And then also electric make-ready engineering work. We do plan to come back with a summer update to council, and probably some RFPs are anticipated as well. And so with these large, what some people have called generational projects. We're also aggressively pursuing recent grant opportunities that came up because of a bipartisan infrastructure bill that was passed a couple years ago. So one of them that we recently just applied for is for the Smart Grid AMI project, and that would be approximately 11 million. We're in the process of applying for the grid modernization project, which is part of the reason why we are trying to solidify the plans, have project milestones, and hopefully we can come back with more details about what that roadmap looks like. So it goes hand in hand with this grant effort as well. That grant would probably be about 100 million to 150 because it is a 50% match of the project total that we estimate in the grant package. And then our gas team, they're also actively pursuing a gas grant, and that would hopefully bring in about $9 million. Next slide, please.
Can I ask a question or should we ask questions to go along? Okay.
Sure.
So these grants, these would be incremental to the budget we're going to see. So this budget does not presume we win these grants, or is that correct?
Correct. We have not reflected these grants until they are until they're approved.
Very wise. But then that would be incremental and would help pull forward some of what we're going to see in the budget. Is that correct?
Well, so what we did do, we programmed in the anticipated project costs as fully as we could, but we did not bring up the revenue in anticipation of the grants until we know the grant status.
Would receiving the grants allow us to reduce our rates?
That is a good question. I think I will have to defer to Jonathan to answer that, our interim rates manager.
Is this working? I'm on. Okay. So we did not include the gas rates, did include winning these grants in setting our gas rates this year. What I will say is that our reserves are in the ballpark of $8 to $10 million below the minimum guideline right now. And so I think rather than allowing us to reduce rates, any additional revenue freed up would probably go towards replenishing reserves. If multiple grants were received, it might, might replenish reserves to the point that we could maybe phase in some of the later year rate increases over a longer period. But when receiving one-time grant proceeds, usually won't allow us to lower rates because they're one-time cost savings as opposed to ongoing cost savings.
Thank you.
May I just ask a quick question? Are these federal or state grants?
These are federal. The grid modernization grants are from the Department of Energy.
Great. Are you aware of a California specific cost share program where you can plus up federal grants by $1 million?
No. We would probably
in future applications to DOE, as long as you apply to California CEC,
yes,
they will provide an extra $1 million supplement.
Okay.
So, and that happens automatically if DOE selects it. So just keep in mind for future applications, but it has to get on the list of eligible grants prior to applying.
I would like to correct myself though. I have kind of a narrow scope of the grants that we're applying for, but we can definitely confirm. Thank you. So this slide actually is a recap of rates that were presented to council on April 17th and also at the budget kickoff earlier this week on Monday. We have new information which impacts the water rates that are not yet reflected in this table. Water rates are comprised of a distribution side and a commodity side, which is the cost to purchase the water. The commodity rates are passed through to the customers, and they're calculated based on SFPUC rate changes. Those are anticipated to change from 11.6% to 9.6%. This change will slightly reduce the water rates, which would decrease from 6% to 5%, about $5.90 down to $5.21 in the estimated monthly bill impact. Next slide, please. So for the following slides, we will go over the preliminary budgets by fund, starting with the electric fund. Copies of the preliminary budget are linked in staff report number 2302-0949. The first 5 links in the staff report go to a preliminary view of the capital budget. Those documents are organized by fund and include a detailed budget summary table and details per project. The last link goes to a preliminary view of the utilities operating budget. That document is organized by fund, starting with an overview, various budget summary tables, and it ends with a detailed reconciliation from the prior year budget to this year's 2024 budget. So we have 5 funds to run through, and if it's okay, we can try to answer questions at the end of the fund section. So kicking off the electric fund, we have some highlights of recent accomplishments. We recently launched our HP heat pump water heater program, and the related on-bill financing program continued to make good progress on our Smart Grid AMI project. And in 2022, we completed a high-level grid modernization study to evaluate the impacts of electrification loads. Recently, we also started construction to increase the physical security at our electric substations. Next are some initiatives planned in the electric fund. We will continue our efforts to apply for grants and explore any alternative funding resources, work on our electric grid modernization plan, which will kind of help tie everything together for the electrification efforts, and then complete a new electric cost of services study, services analysis, and launch the new outage management system. Next slide, please. So this slide shows the electric operating expenses for fiscal year 24, grouped by major expense categories. So if you're following along in the linked documents, the budget summary tables for electric start on page 13 of the operating book. The key drivers for electric expenses come from utility commodity purchases, which are comprised of costs incurred from purchasing activities to purchase energy. There's also expenses from the capital. Next slide, please. Here we have a high-level view of the electric fund's 5-year capital improvement program. Details by project can be found in the preliminary capital budget link for the electric fund. For more visibility on this slide, we highlighted the grid modernization project, so it's its own category in the yellow bars. The first column on the left, it provides the estimated year-end total for fiscal year 23. And then after initial reappropriations have been made, so we had already reappropriated $12.5 million from fiscal year 23 into fiscal year 24. That 12.5 million is already reflected in the second column to the left with 54.9 million total in fiscal year 24. So, oh, yes.
Yeah. Would this be a good place to address the question that I raised before, namely what's in the electric fund grid modernization? Because I did read the reference document, the number 8987, and I didn't see anything in there either. So I'd like to understand what's in that activity, since it's, as you can see, it's the big chunk of the budget for electric, capital budget for electric.
It is. So what we have here is just a very high estimate of the cost, partly driven by the grant efforts. Further details, though, are in flux. So we do have that high-level study that was completed in December. A more in-depth one is on the way. And I think if we do want further details, we should probably come back to UAC with that information. The budget that we provided here was just very high level and preliminary so that there's more transparency and awareness of how much it would cost to really go support a 100% electrification infrastructure.
Right, that's exactly the question. What's in there?
What's needed, yes. There would be details about what's needed, numbers of transformers that would have to be upgraded, that kind of information, I do believe is forthcoming.
Okay, I mean, since it's between $200 and $300 million,
Yes.
it seems like.
Definitely. And we're even
they're-
writing it out for the grant as well. So
Okay, thank you.
thank you for your patience. I did want to spend a second to explain what reappropriations are, since we have some new members. So reappropriations happen when work that was programmed for the current fiscal year is anticipated to continue on into the next fiscal year. For the electric fund, this is mostly due to limited engineering resources. And so some of the projects had to be postponed. And then there were also some intentional postponement to try to align with the grid modernization efforts. There's also some supply chain issues. And it's actually, we have some difficulty procuring transformers. And so those are just some examples of why we may reappropriate funds from one year to the next. Next slide, please. So in summary, the electric fund fiscal year 24 revenues are approximately 265 million. This is about 80 million more than what was adopted in the fiscal year 23 budget. This big discrepancy is mostly due to the fiscal year 23 adopted budget. The retail sales revenue for the adopted did not reflect market spikes that happened throughout fiscal year 23. There was a mid-year alignment brought forward in the fiscal year 23 mid-year adjustments. So if we compared it to the modified fiscal year 23 budget, it would actually be about a $10 million increase instead of 30 million. In addition to increases in retail sales, we also had that when we also reflect the debt financing we plan to go for with the grid modernization project to help fund it through some bonds. And there was that one-time $24 million revenue from the lawsuit that we won. I would like to quickly note the 24 million payment, it was received in fiscal year 23, but at the time we published this information, we were anticipating it for 24. So if you happen not to see it in 24, it's still there. It just got received in 23. For fiscal year 24 expenses, we're looking at about 260 million. And most of this is comprised of that capital improvement expense, and then also the commodity purchases. So similarly, on the expense side, there were some market changes that happened in fiscal year 23. So if we actually compared the commodity purchases to modified fiscal year 23 budget, it's about a 5.7 million difference instead of 17 million. For another data point, this slide shows the City of Palo Alto's residential electric bill compared to PG&E and Santa Clara. Although the City of Palo Alto is lower than PG&E, we are slightly higher than Santa Clara because they do generate their own electric power. Next slide, please. All right. And so for those following along in the linked documents, the fiber fund starts on page 23. Oh, I apologize. We would like to take questions about the electric fund at this time.
I had one question, which was I looked at the rate increase and didn't really understand that. So maybe you could explain that. I mean, I know it was a cut, but the core rate was going up 21%. And it seemed like with the plush hydro that we expect to have for the next 2 years, that shouldn't be happening. So maybe you could just help explain that a little.
Sure. So we'll invite Jonathan, our rate Manager Becker.
Okay.
Thank you.
So the story here is that electric rates, electric revenues are about 20% below electric costs going forward for the long term. And so there's a need to match revenues to costs. And normally we would want to do that over several years, but the drought combined with the FY 2023 electric price spikes, even with the hydro rate adjuster that we put in, not all of that cost was passed through to customers. And so reserves are very low in the electric utility. Fortunately, we were able to receive $24 million from a settlement with the federal government over our cost allocations in the federal hydropower project. We were able to use that to replenish our reserves somewhat. We were able to repay an outstanding internal loan to our electric special projects reserves. So not only were operations reserves low, they also had outstanding internal loans to other reserves within the electric utility. So we were able to repay those. And then we have a reserve that we use to balance our hydroelectric from year to year. And our target for that reserve to be able to have an adequate cushion to manage through dry periods is about $19 million. As of the end of last year, the reserve balance was $400,000. So some of the money from that settlement also went toward the replenishing that reserve. With all of that in place, we felt comfortable enough recommending that we eliminate the hydroelectric rate adjuster. There were really good indicators for hydroelectric power generation around that time. We're expecting that a lot of the revenue from the strong hydro generation this year will go into replenishing this hydroelectric stabilization reserve. And the net effect, so we're not expecting to use that money to hold down rates because that puts us in a bad position for future years. However, that replenishing of reserves that happened allowed us to remove the hydroelectric rate adjuster. And so even with the 21% base rate increase, people will see a 5% decrease on average in their bills. So we were able to give people a bill decrease, even though we were trying to put our electric utility on much firmer financial footing. Does that all make sense? It's a very complicated story.
It sounds like it goes back to the hydro rate adjuster doesn't exactly match our costs is really kind of core.
Well, that's part of it. And we're looking at, this was our first experience with the, and what it really goes back to is holding down rates during the pandemic for several years. People were able to benefit from lower rates for several years, and we're catching up from that. The hydroelectric rate adjuster, you're right, the design can be improved. I think this was our first experience putting it into effect, and I think we learned some things that we'd like to modify.
Right. It's a little confusing because we call it the hydro rate adjuster, but it really is something we charge for buying other electricity. And when we have not
true.
have hydro,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, to manage the impacts of lower hydroelectric generation.
Right. Okay, so I guess I understand. It just seems like we're bulking up the core rate now.
Right.
Which makes it kind of permanent as opposed to something that would depend on future, energy costs.
Yeah, so that's true. It's somewhat true. Part of what's happening is that our long-term, so the hydro rate adjuster is meant to manage hydroelectric variability, and there are some increases in our core costs, our core continuing costs unrelated to hydro. So those are driving the base rate increase. There are also long-term increases in the cost of energy that are also part of that core rate increase. At the same time, the drought-related issues that were related, that caused us to put the hydro rate adjuster in place are easing. And so we're able to pull it off. And so these two things offset each other, but it is not true that we are taking costs associated with the hydroelectric rate adjuster and putting them into the base rate, because that hydro adjuster is meant to manage the variability
Right. I mean,
associated with hydroelectric.
That's helpful. I guess if this were 7% or even 10%, I wouldn't have flagged it, but it's 21%.
Yeah, no, it's,
You know, to say that labor costs have gone up or whatever other costs have gone up, I mean, that's a lot for 1 year, in 1 year.
It is. I will just point out that for the previous 3 years, we had, I think, 0, 0, and 5%. And when we look at the overall bill increase, so last year, because of the spikes, we saw about an 11% increase. If we go back to that chart on the overall rate increases, you can see that this year was about an overall 11% increase in the median residential bill. But the previous 2 years were 1% increases. When you annualize it over those 3 years, it's about 4% increases. And utility rates, utility costs, utility rates overall nationwide are increasing above inflation because of aging infrastructure and all the investment that's involved in that. So it looks like a lot because it's all packed into 1 year, but we really did hold things down for a couple of years there.
Okay, well, thank you for mapping it out.
Good.
Yeah.
I have a new member question just on some of the categorization of the pie chart versus the next page. So what makes a capital improvement program, what's the difference between what's in that bucket versus the capital budget expenses on the following page?
Are we talking about the slide, the pie chart?
The
in
pie
slide?
chart is the operating, like what makes something in the operating budget versus.
Got it. So the capital improvement program in the pie chart, that is the non-salary capital expenses for fiscal year 24. But the capital improvement program, although we adopt the capital costs for fiscal year 24, it's a 5-year plan. And so in the bar chart, what we see are the entire 5-year plan. And so in fiscal year 24, the 54.9 million, that is a fully loaded cost, including salary and benefits for the capital improvement program in electric fund.
Okay, got it. So that's the main difference is that it's not an entire picture in the pie chart.
Correct.
Okay.
Or the pie chart, it took all the salary and benefits and combined it into one slice.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I did have a question on the more detailed electric budget.
Sure.
Is now the time to ask that?
Yes.
Okay, so there was a bump from 22 to 23 in the electric demand side management from 2.9 million to 8.3 million. And I was just curious, like, what are we doing on the demand side that cost went toward? We had a similar demand side bump on the gas budget. And so I was just curious, like, what falls in that bucket?
Are you looking at the operating budget book, page 14?
I'm looking at page 13 of, I
Okay.
dug into the electric specific budget. That was not in the packet. It was linked in the packet.
Got it. So John.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. I don't know. Yeah. I don't see a footnote on it, or I can show you this if you want.
I think Jonathan will be able to answer.
All right.
Yeah. So a lot of what you're seeing is related to the Sustainability and Climate Action Plan. So we are, for example, the cost of the advanced heat pump water heater pilot program is, I believe, $5.7 million. On top of that, we have multifamily electric vehicle charging, multifamily electric vehicle charging program that has a significant budget in it. And also we have, we're trying to ramp up and we have some ambitious goals around energy efficiency as well. got new contracts in place. So we are going to spend this money that's available to us for cutting emissions and doing energy efficiency work.
I'm glad we
excited.
will be spending it. So it's good to know. I just was wondering, that's exactly the programs we've heard about. So that makes sense. Thank you.
Do we have any more questions for the electric fund? Okay, so the fiber fund starts on page 23 if you're following along in the linked budget documents. We recently accomplished some major milestones for upgrading the fiber infrastructure. We completed 100% engineering design for the city's fiber backbone and fiber to the premises, or FTTP network. We received strong community interest in FTTP, collecting over 3,600 surveys from the community and deposits from 700 residents. We also received approval from council in December to proceed with a new fiber backbone project in phase 1 of the FTTP project. So we're going to be staffing up and added 2 new dedicated fiber people, dark fiber engineering, and a market analyst. Some upcoming fiber initiatives are plans to add fiber in the foothills, continue searching for alternative funding sources, and to issue construction bids and proposals related to the fiber backbone and FTTP projects. Most of the 36.75 million you see here is comprised of the capital improvement program. So that's coming from costs for the fiber backbone and the FTTP project, which we programmed into fiscal year 24. Other major expenses are salary and benefits and allocated charges. Allocated charges are the internal overhead costs from internal services such as IT or HR support. Next slide, please. So in summary, the fiber fund's fiscal year 24 revenues are anticipated to be 4.6 million. Most of this is attributed to a $200,000 increase in return on investments. And that's because the city's treasury has projected market increases due to inflation. Fiber expenses are anticipated to be about 37 million. This is a 32.2 million increase from fiscal year 23 adopted budget. And again, it's mostly due to the investments in our capital improvement program and additional staffing added to support the rollout of FTTP. This slide provides some additional background for the fiber expansion plan because it is such a large infrastructure investment. For some context, the city has an existing fiber backbone network. A non-technical way to think about the fiber backbone expansion that I have in my head is that it's like we are repaving the road and adding some more lanes. FTTP, on the other hand, we're not only building more fiber, but we're also creating a new service delivery model to offer fiber broadband internet to the community on a fiber network that we build. A non-technical way to think about the FTTP project is it's like we're adding roads in the driveways to individual premises. To help with the fiber expansion and FTTP project, Magellan, a municipal fiber consultant, has been contracted with the city. Council also recently approved to amend and expand the Magellan contract to support the next phases of the fiber project. And so now we can take some questions for the fiber fund.
The only revenue on here is from this program is just interest on money in the fund. Is that correct?
Correct. So the 4.6 million is just fiber. Oh, the 4.6 million is fiber revenue from our existing dark fiber business.
Got it.
Commissioner Forso. Quick question. The phase build out of FTTP phase 1 and the initiative to add fiber in the foothills, are those the same thing or are those completely different things?
They're different. So the fiber to the foothills is more part of the fiber expansion plan. So we would be
The extra lanes, if you will, and not the driveways?
correct. But it's also for the internal cities cameras and
What
equipment.
facilities, what city facilities are being connected up there? Out of
So
curiosity.
if you remember we had some customers call us, actually
I
talked to
do
all of
remember
us
that.
up there. So the thing is, we haven't been able to connect them yet. So the idea is to push the fiber back up as we are undergrounding the electric line that's running through Foothills Park. So we're going to combine those two. And then the other thing is that we have some reservoirs up there that don't have any fiber. So we have no security per se. And then also there's going to be some links that are going to happen to the new police station. They want to do some site to site using that. And then, so we want to push fiber more up in that Foothills area. So that those are the two projects differences. And the phase one is more in town.
Got it. Okay, so the dark fiber is being pulled up there both because there's just an opportunity because undergrounding is happening anyway, and we always talk about when you're digging anyway, so it's actually happening. But also, but the dark fiber is being provided just as dark fiber to the community up there that wanted internet access, but they're going to form their own ISP.
Right. The neighbors over there are trying to find a partner to help meet us with the dark fiber spot.
Okay.
And then they would connect them
But
with
that is
ISP.
unrelated to phase one.
That is correct. That's
Great.
a separate endeavor.
Okay, thanks.
I have one question. I just, not quite, I'm understanding is the same question or related to what Commissioner Phillips was asking. So we have 4.6 million on the dark fiber. I understand this. And this 200,000 return on investment, that's just the interest on the cash that's sitting there in the fund. And the 4.6 million revenue, like how much does it cost us for that 4.6 million?
The cost is pretty minimal. It's just really just the salaries and benefits because the infrastructure has already been paid for 20 years ago and there's very low maintenance. It just.
But like when we upgraded the University Avenue and whatnot, that wasn't, that was not insignificant, right? I mean,
Right,
how much
so-
is allocated to fiber expansion?
I think for that one, I think the fiber we paid about $1.5 million towards that one, towards that project.
Okay, great, thanks.
And now I'll go ahead and pass the presentation on to Anna.
Thanks, Alex. All right. So I'll be going over the gas, water and wastewater funds. It's not as sparkly and interesting as gas, and electric and fiber, but and I might just zip through everything. So please slow me down if you need to. Okay. So similar in format to Alex's slide on electric and fiber, we have the gas accomplishments here. We've completed phase 3 of the cross-bore program. So for the new commissioners, the cross-bore is when a utility line crosses through another, in this case, gas lines through a sewer lateral. To date, we've inspected over 9,000 laterals and we have about 3,700 remaining. Overall, we found about a total of 27 cross-bores to date. For gas main replacement projects, the city replaces approximately 4 miles of gas mains every 2 years. We've completed the gas main replacement for 23 and project 24A. And we will be finalizing the designs for and going out to bid actually for gas main replacement 24B. So the gas main replacement projects, wastewater and water, they're all they're consecutive, brought together. They're based on criteria of age of the pipe, the deterioration of the pipe, maybe even pipe material. And then they're packaged together into a project number and funded in future years, as we'll see in the CIP slide. In initiatives, we will then, with the bid, we will work on the construction and complete 24B, our gas main 24B. We also have a gas decommissioning study slated for fiscal year 24 to meet the overall city's SCAP goals to reduce carbon emissions and electrification. We'll start a study in 24 to evaluate the approach for downsizing the gas system and identifying potential locations for proof of concept. Another initiative is due to the recent winter gas price spikes, staff will evaluate winter hedging strategies to mitigate the future price spikes. And then similar to electric and fiber too, we mentioned looking to apply for the federal grants as well for the gas. All right, next slide. This is the budget, gas operating budget by category. Top 3 categories is purchases, commodity purchases, the CIP, and salaries and benefits. And the next slide is our gas CIP program for the next 5 years. In fiscal year, or in the current year, we have 14.8 million in estimates that for fiscal year 23. And we have programmed for fiscal year 24 is about 7 million. And it includes a little bit of the reappropriations, about 300,000. You see that it's a big, tall bar in 23 because we have about 10 million for GMR 24 A and B already funded in 23. And then in 24, it's a design year, 25, it's a construction year, but we've spread it out in the next 5 years so that it's not that peak and valley that we're gonna see or that we've seen here. Let's see. And then we can, oh yes, thank you. For the gas summary, revenues, we'll see an increase of about 19.6 million over as compared to the fiscal year 23 adopted budget. This, as we know, the high market prices, the fiscal year 23 adopted doesn't reflect those fluctuations. So we'll see a 19.8 million in retail sales increase. And then in expenses, it's an increase of 6.2 million, and that'll cover the commodity purchases. I just want to note here that you see that negative 5.9 capital improvement, as I mentioned just in the previous slide, it's just because we're moving from one year to the next. It's 10 million in 23, and then coming down to 5 million in fiscal year 24. And we have another slide. It's the bill comparison. Palo Alto is, our Palo Alto median residential bill is about 11% below PG&E. That's all I have for the gas fund. If you have any questions.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Okay, for the wastewater fund, we've completed the design and construction for the Project 31. Project 31 construction was actually programmed in fiscal year 24. Due to coordination with Caltrains, we had to pull forward pull forward the funding from fiscal year 24 to 23. The Caltrain has a big repaving project happening at along Alma. And if we miss that, it's going to be another 5 years before we can come back to that area. And actually, I think we can probably consider wastewater project 30 as all an accomplishment too. We have actually just about to wrap up. We have some punch list items in there, so not quite an initiative. We do have a sewer master plan study that's planned for fiscal year 24. We last did a master plan study in 2004. This will help us determine our present and future capacity for wastewater collection. It'll also help us determine like the areas, the future areas of the projects that for replacement. And they're going to develop a hydraulic model as well as a model for capacity analysis. Lots of engineering stuff. We've also replaced, or we will replace 39 monitoring units for sewer sanitary overflow throughout various areas of the city. That's been helpful in bringing down our overflow numbers because it alerts us before the overflow happens. And then we have construction of 31. That's again the one with coordination with Caltrain. And for our wastewater operating expenses, our pie chart, the top categories are utility purchases, which is actually the treatment plant. And it's not CIP for this fund. And then it's allocated charges and salaries and benefits. So allocated charges, as Alex mentioned earlier, are internal services with HR, IT, ASD. Our numbers, the CIP is lower here in this fund because, again, in 24, the funding that we had originally planned for 31 was moved forward. So it looks like it's a lot lower, but it's really not, because once we encumber the contract this year, the activity is going to start in July. We'll have to reappropriate or carry forward that contract to next year anyway.
I have one question. So almost half of the operating expenses is utility. So that's the gas and electric to operate the plant. Is that what that is? Or what is? So it's.
So that's a wastewater treatment charges. Yes.
So that's the charges that the wastewater treatment plant charges us, which is proportional to our usage relative to the others. And then the salary and benefits are the salary and the benefits of the people here. They're not part of those charges.
Right.
So that can be entirely considered separate.
Yes, they're separate.
Thank you.
Okay, so 30% is electricity of that 12 million?
Yes, I think we share with 4 or 5 different partners, like Mountain View and whoever else. I think the city's share is about 30 something percent, 32% currently of the treatment plant. But I think we are doing an assessment to see if that's the right percentage. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, I guess I'm just trying to understand what is encompassed in that utility purchase, since it's half of the.
Yeah, those are just the treatment charges for the regional water quality plant. That's how much they charge us to
clean our wastewater. Okay, so it's not utility in the sense of what we think of it as gas and electricity. It's operating the plant.
Yes. I think they just try to standardize the categories across all the different funds. So it should be called treatment charges and not commodity purchase.
Right. And then our next slide is our capital improvement. So as mentioned previously, we have a big spike in fiscal year 23. About 5 million of that was originally in 24. And then in fiscal years 25, 26, 27, 28, we actually do have some changes for the wastewater that's not reflected here. We are increasing the replacement rate from 1 to 1.5 miles to 2.5 miles per year, right? And that's not shown here. This will be part of the adopted budget. We will see the spike start in 26, in fiscal year 26. Go from 5.2 million for a replacement project to about 11 million per project. And so in summary, in revenues, the wastewater collection fund we're anticipating an increase of about 2.1 million, and that can be attributed to the rate increase. And in expenses, we have an increase of 700,000, and that's towards the treatment treatment plant charges. They have a rehabilitation project, so I think we may see like incremental increases over the next couple of years or few years, 7 to 10 years. They have a big rehabilitation project. It's about $300 million that they're.
But you don't expect that to start being imposed for another 7, it's not going to start for another 7 or 10 years. So those 300 million are outside of the 5-year plan we're seeing here.
It's part of the financial forecast already in the wastewater treatment, in the wastewater collection fund. We've already included that forecast into the financial plan for these increases.
They're also going to be bond financing most of that money, so we're only going to be paying the debt service part of it, or 30% of it.
Yes, that does sound like a big number. It's not all for us.
But we have about a third of that 300 million.
And then in our next slide, we have some sewer bill comparison for residential and non-residential customers. Residential, we are about 28% below our comparison cities. And then in the non-residential for commercial class customers, it's about 7% above. And then for the restaurant class customers, it's 12% below our city comparators.
Does the regional water quality plant, do they lease their land from us or rent it from us?
No, I believe they own it, right? The city owns that.
We own it.
They pay rent to the city, probably, like we do for our substations and reservoirs.
Two very quick questions. Do we have a meter on our wastewater or is that reference to water?
We don't have a meter for our
Okay.
wastewater, right? It's based on the.
Yeah, just we do.
Commercial. Right.
Sorry, I can't.
Did you catch that? For residential customers, it's a flat rate. For commercial customers, it's based on their water usage.
Great. And then in terms of accelerating these lines and these sewer main replacements, aside from the fact that when the road's dug up, like you might be incentivized to replace it, is there a sort of data-driven plan for and ranking for when we decide to kind of replace different parts of the lines?
Right, yes, we do. So the sewer master plan that we're going to be doing this year will inform us of will provide more information about the age of the pipes and the deterioration of the pipes as well. Yes, there is a rankings that they put together.
Okay.
Can you just remind us with the comparison cities? And mostly I'm curious why Hayward shows up there. It seems a little bit, I don't know, surprising.
Oh, Jonathan's going to help us out with that question.
I'm going to have to confer with a colleague. It's been a while since I looked at this one, but what I remember about Hayward is that they have first off, they are right across the bay from us, and they have similar water supplies, and they have some water and wastewater rates that I think are a little bit on the low side. And I think there was a desire at some point to include them as a comparison city, and so they were added in. But I would need to go back and talk to my colleague, Lisa Belier, about see if she remembers the history.
And then the other thing I just want to follow up, did you say that we are hiring someone to take a look at our participation obligation for the plant, what percent, and any idea when that study will happen?
Yeah, I think that endeavor is being led by water quality. So Public Works is leading that effort. They're hiring a consultant to check the flows of all the different cities.
Great, I'm really glad to hear they're pursuing that. Commissioner Mater? Thank you.
Now on to our last fund, it's the water fund. Our accomplishments, we mentioned the One Water Plan. We've began the community engagement and the development of the One Water Plan. It's a 20-year water supply plan to address supply reliability and the droughts and climate change. We will have completed by the June of 2023 is the assessment for Park Reservoir to determine whether or not we're going to replace Park Reservoir or rehabilitate Park Reservoir. And in terms of initiatives, once we have that assessment done, then we can go ahead and design and construct for Park Reservoir. We also have wrapping up the Water Main Replacement Project 28. And Project 29 actually begins in fiscal year 24 as well. Okay, and the next slide here in our operating pie chart or operating expense pie chart, we have top 3 categories is the utility purchase, the water commodity, the CAP program, and the salaries and benefits. For the capital improvement to 5-year plan, we have in fiscal year 23, we have our current year total is 27 million. That's adopted budget. And we are estimating about 14.4 million of that will be spent and reappropriating 12.6 of that. Bulk of that would be the Park Reservoir and water system supply improvements project. We have an initiative to replace the security cameras as well as install generators at our booster stations and pump stations. And so in fiscal year 24, the CIP for water fund is 26 million, and that includes that 12.6 reappropriation that I just mentioned. Okay, and then in summary for the water fund, we anticipate an increase of 3 million in revenues, and that would be at the point of time when we were putting the presentation together, it was the 6% rate increase. But now, and for the adopted version, or the adopted budget, we'll be proposing a 5% rate increase. And then in expenses, it's an increase of about 13 million. That includes the capital improvement. So that would be some of the reappropriations from 23, as well as water main replacement 29. And then as well as an increase from the SFPUC commodity rate increase of what at the time was 11% and now is 9.6%. Okay. And then our next slide is the water bill comparison for residential customers. Palo Alto is about 14% above our other comparator cities. We do have a proactive investment in our infrastructure and we're 100% Hetch Hetchy. Some of these other cities might have brown water sources. And then our next slide is our commercial water bill comparison, where we are 5% above comparison. I did note that we are getting closer, and we used to be higher than Redwood City. So our the gap between how high we are compared to other cities is closing. And then, what do we have any questions for the water fund?
Commissioner or Vice Chair Scharf.
Thanks. I don't really have a question. I actually just wanted to give a comment. I actually just remembered why we use Hayward. One, I think it's because of Bosca, and we use it on this as well because they get Hetch Hetchy water as well. And then a lot of cities actually don't do their own sewer, like Fremont, Newark, and Union City belong to Alameda County Water District. And I think Oakland and most of the other North Alameda counties belong to East Bay Mud. I think it's one of those that actually works. I remember something about that when we chose it a long time ago. So I just thought I'd throw that out because it might help.
Great, thank you.
Thanks. Commissioner Philip?
I guess I'm just curious about the water fund, the difference between the revenues and the expenses. The $21 million gap. Maybe I missed something, but
Yeah, I think part of it is because of the reappropriation. So there's like 10 million of money that was encumbered in 2023, but we have moved out to 2024. And then the other reason is we do have a healthier reserves in water compared to the other utilities. Mostly it's because of deferral of CIP projects in the past. And also during COVID, the revenues actually was higher than we projected because of people working from home and so forth. So
the 9.4 million, the reappropriation is already covered in because we already have the budget for that. And the remainder is going to come out of the reserves. Is that what I hear?
yes,
And that will leave our reserves in a reasonable position.
yes, it's still in a very healthy state.
I guess I'll ask my question now, since it's a similar question, before we go on to staffing, but it was about the budget. And again, I'm sorry, I don't know, this is a page 8 of, I was trying to find like just a summary of all the funds, revenue and expenses. And so it's a page 8 of, I think it was the attached budget, full budget. And so the revenues are, the expenses are 470 million and the revenues are 413. So there's a big difference this year, or sorry, for 2024 proposed budget. But then if I look past 22 and 23 are the same, like there's very large difference between the expenses being much, much higher than the revenues consistently. And so I was curious where that money came from. How are we covering those shortfalls? And so I went to go look at the city budget, but we don't break it out by fund. So it's really hard. You can't figure it out. So what are we just eating into reserves, or is there some other place that the shortfall comes from?
Yeah, so part of those expenses is reappropriation dollars. I don't know what the total, it might be like around 20 million for 2024, I'm guessing roughly. But another thing is for budget expenses, it's how much we're authorized to spend. We don't normally spend everything. So for like CIP, we only usually spend anywhere from 25 to 50% of our budget, depending on the time when we issue the project and depending on staffing. And for salaries and savings, we do have a 20% vacancy, so that won't get spent as well. So there's also contract services that we may not have time to complete. So I think what we realize usually is about, I want to say 60 to 75% of our expenses we'll spend. So even though we are authorized to spend more, we don't usually use it all.
I can also add that when we reappropriate things from one year to another, we've collected the money for those expenses in rates. And so you may have, so that'll end up in reserves and then get drawn down the following year. So it's all factored into the long-term business plan, the long-term rate plan, when that sort of inter-fiscal year thing happens.
So do you have, just to follow up, so this is happening now repeatedly for 3 years, that we have a much bigger, so do we just have kind of a rule of thumb when we're doing our planning that on the expense side, we're not going to spend it all? Like, just how do you come up with a budget where you're so different in terms of revenues and expenses and feel comfortable with it? Like, how do you, is it due to that rule of thumb that you're talking about, where really the expenses that you're expecting, you never spend them all?
I would think, yes, that is part of the dynamics of the budget to the actuals. It's probably better if you look at the prior year actuals to see what the true spend rate is. So you'll see that like our budget actuals from prior years in 21 and 22. The total expenses is more like 280, 320 million. And whereas not what we're budgeting this year is more like a lot more than what we're really able to spend. Like if of that money, again, there's like $50 million in the grid modernization project and the fiber to the premises. So those dollars will get spent a little bit, but not the full amount. And that'll be carried forward to the following year after that. That's everything, actually.
Oh, everything. Yeah, well, and then there's also some things in there that are going to be debt financed, and there are some things. Right? Yeah, so there are also some items in there that we're expecting to debt finance, so that's probably responsible for part of it. And then we also have a practice of spending more on CIP in some years and less in other years. So doing a main replacement project, for example, every other year so that we can have a larger project and be able to get more bids and also manage staff capacity issues. And so you'll see some years you'll see high spending on capital and low spending the next year. And we take care of that through a capital reserve that we maintain. So that's what the next year, and we already brought this to the commission, but every year we'll bring essentially a business plan, a financial plan for each utility that takes all of these year-to-year variances into account, maps them against the reserves and against rates. And that's where we really do the checks to make sure that the utilities are in a good financial position.
Okay, thanks. I'll look forward to that.
And we can forward those to you too.
Okay, that'd be awesome.
Any other questions? No? Okay. All right, well, we'll move on to staffing. We touched on it a little bit with the strategic plan, but this just kind of goes back to it. This slide here is on our vacancies and active recruitments. Currently, we're at 57 vacancies to date, and that is represents a 22% vacancy. We do have 34 active recruitments, and we're able to do that with the help of the HR liaisons that we mentioned earlier. And in the next slide here, it's just kind of covers what Tabitha mentioned earlier. Despite all the activity, we do have a net loss of 6 FTEs. We've hired 30 new hires from in the calendar year 22 and the first 3 months of this year. We've also had 23 promotions, but through all of that shuffle, we did have 5 retirements and 31 separations. So for a net loss of 6. So we don't quite catch up, even though we have all this, work that we've been doing in filling the positions. And then our next slide for recruitment and retainment strategies. The recent, I think, Commissioner or Councilman Lowy had mentioned that the negotiations in the recent contract, right? We did there has been some market alignments, about a 10% to the market rate, and we'll continue that effort as well to reach market rate or be more competitive. And then we also have the flexible remote work in place for the positions that are available to take advantage of that. And we have our new apprenticeship programs. One other thing to highlight is our cross-training program with our meter readers. Part of the AMI transition or post-AMI transition for that project is to provide our meter readers opportunities within the department, other options as well. So we did have one meter reader go to customer service and another meter reader go to water transmission. And then we do cross-train when we have full staffing in the meter reading position group. We do have full staffing via hourly positions. And so when those are all full, we're able to provide our full-time guys and even the hourlies cross-training opportunities. And then, let's see, we talked about career fairs and retention. So in the new contract with SEIU, we have there's a hiring bonus and a retention bonus that they have put in. We will need some interpretation from HR, but it's on a case-by-case basis. So that should help in terms of recruitments and retention as well. We'll see that in maybe the next couple months or a year. We'll get some data there. And I think, oh, one more thing. Proposed staffing for fiscal year 24. This is reflected in the various funds over the budget book. We're proposing to increase our regular FTEs by 4.5 positions, and that's mostly in the Palo Alto Fiber. I think it's going to be a new division, and then a 0.04 in the hourly. So that our 0.04 is where we're going to increase the hourly position up to 1.0 FTE. Any questions on staffing in general?
I think we spent a lot of time on staffing.
Okay, great. All right.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. And then I think that is our recommendation slide. Do I have to read that out? Oh, okay.
So it's two different motions. So if anybody wants to move to recommend that council approve the proposed FY24 utilities operating budget. Do I have a motion to approve that?
I'll move it.
And a second? Great. So why don't we just go down the line, starting with Commissioner Croft? Approve it?
Yes.
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 Vice Chair Scharf?
Yes.
And I approve as well. So that passes. And then the next motion is to recommend that council approve the proposed FY 2024 utilities capital budget. Do I have a motion?
I'll move that.
Second?
Second.
Okay, we'll start on that and Commissioner Silver.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Recognizing the great amount of work that went into this, in the absence of any specifics on the grid modernization, I'm going to vote no.
Yes. Vice Chair Scharf?
Yes.
And yes. That carries as well. Okay, thank you for all the work on that. And now we'll move to commissioner comments and reports from any meetings and events. Any commissioner comments? Commissioner Forsyth?
I have not myself been into any meetings and events, but I'm curious if any of the commissioners that sit on the SCAP committees, if they're still serving on those committees, and if they have any reports. That was sort of the plan a while back that Commissioner Metz, for example, I don't know if you're still serving on the technology committee, that those commissioners would bring back news to the UAC in this section of our agenda.
No,
Not to put you on the spot, but I'm totally putting you on the spot.
That's okay. No, I'm not on that now. There was a meeting that I was invited to a few weeks ago, but I couldn't attend.
Then I guess I have a question, which is, do we have any formal connection to the SCAP committees anymore? There was a time we sort of, a bunch of commissioners volunteered for various SCAP positions. I'm not sure we ever really kind of heard back. I don't know if that's something we want to try to make happen again.
Yeah, as far as I know, right now, not. And with the change in the mayorship in city council, so that changed that. I know that Mayor Ku's trying to have a meeting with commission chairs this month or next month, and maybe that's something to bring up then. Vice Chair Scharf.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask staff if they could bring back the COTP report. I think we had it scheduled in May. Haven't seen it.
Yeah, sorry, it cut me off a little bit off guard. Vice Chair Scharf. Yeah, it's just an informational report in tonight's packet, but we would be more than glad to bring it back and have a conversation about it because we are going to have to make some decisions if we're going to lay this off, this asset, or do we go ahead and want to look at it. As you saw in the write-up portion of it, we are actually right now shopping to see if there's some financial resource impacts to us. We know that we probably have somewhere close to about $1 million if we kept it, but we are looking at to see what we might be able to get soliciting some bids if we want to lay it off. And then that's what we had done in the past, but we'll bring it back. We can probably bring it back next month and have a discussion about it.
I'm interested in that one as well. One specific question I had is, what is the carbon intensity of the electricity coming from that one, which I didn't see in the short report. Would be good to, obviously important input to the decision.
Is it all, we'll take it up next time, all Bonneville Power?
Yeah, I think that it's not agendized, so we don't want to get too deep into a discussion, but if you have feedback for what we'd like to hear in the discussion, that's helpful.
Yes, I'd like to hear if it's all Bonneville Power.
And I would just like to make sure, or I thought there was some issue with liability on that transmission line in case there are fires that go through there and what that looks like for the city.
Yeah, I think what I'm hearing is I know we didn't have a lot of information yet, and so the report was a little thin, but I think there's a fair amount of interest, and hopefully when it comes back, we get a little more depth into what our exposure is. Any other commissioner comments or reports, or we can move on to future meeting topics? Any future meeting topics? Well, great. Well, welcome.
Actually,
again.
sorry.
Okay.
I have one just for floating it, as I think I have interest in what is the resident experience of AMI. And I think it was suggested that maybe we could all experience it ourselves and then we wouldn't have to agendize it if we actually did it. But I am definitely interested in what the resident experience is once that happens.
Yeah, I think once it's rolled out, we'll be getting regular reports on that. But yeah, I think we'll have an opportunity to experience it early as well. I think that's what we had decided, but that'll be great to have that information. Okay, any other topics? Well, great. Well, what I was gonna say is welcome to the dais. This is, I know your second meeting, all of you, but your first meeting in chambers. And thanks for persevering. And if anyone wants to move to adjourn.
I'll move to adjourn.
I'll second.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.